Ladies and gentlemen, we have finally arrived to that glorious time of the year. July in the fishing world means one thing: new gear. So love it or hate it, ICAST is the single biggest week of the year for fishing product launches, including new rods, reels, baits, accessories, apparel, kayaks, motors, batteries, and everything in between. And today, we're going to cover it all: the good, the bad, and the ugly. So buckle up. The 2025 ICAST episode of the Tackle Talk podcast starts right now.
Hello, everybody. I'm Bill Dance, and you're listening to Tackle Talk.
This is the Tackle Talk podcast, brought to you by American Legacy Fishing and Outdoors. World-class fishing gear, unmatched personal service. Now, here's your host, Andrew Hayes.
Hey everybody, welcome back to another very, very special episode of the Tackle Talk podcast. But first, we are brought to you by our friends over at American Legacy Fishing. And ALF has been supporting this show and making the Tackle Talk podcast possible for years now. And in return, we've been telling you why American Legacy Fishing should be the first place you check for your new fishing gear. And lately, those of you that have taken our advice have been handsomely rewarded because they've been dropping mega deals right in your inbox for weeks now. Deal after deal after deal. Like a few days ago, I got a random email that was like, hey, 30% off all Shimano baits and 40% off all Berkeley. That was just on a random weekday morning. And then you could open up your email a few days later and you get like 25% off Dobbins rods or 20% off Arc or something like that. You never know. They are known to drop crazy deals right in your email inbox. And on top of that, they have a price match guarantee. They have fast shipping. They have a great loyalty program. They have the internet's best selection of lightly used fishing gear. And the main reason that I would run through a brick wall for the boys over at American Legacy Fishing is because I have seen them bend over backwards to make sure they make things right for their customers in ways that other retailers simply would not. And that's what you get when you shop from a local family-owned tackle store and a retailer like American Legacy Fishing that you just don't get from those other big box stores. Better prices, better service, and a better overall experience. So go check them out over at www.americanlegacyfishing.com. And be sure to use code TACKLETALK5. That's going to save you an extra 5% off both regularly priced and sale items. Again, that is AmericanLegacyFishing.com and code TACKLETALK5. Okay, folks, we have arrived. It is time for what I think is probably our most highly anticipated show of the year. The full, honest, comprehensive breakdown of everything at ICAST. And I know a lot of you are new listeners to the show over the past year or two, so I think it's worth repeating. This should be unlike almost anything else you're going to hear or see from ICAST. Why? Because the way we have built this show allows us to be truly 100% unbiased and not influenced by any companies or sponsors or outside factors when it comes to our coverage, our analysis, and our opinions on new rods, new reels, line, or baits. We have not and will not take a penny of sponsorship money from any rod, reel, line, or bait companies because that, to me, defeats the purpose of Tackle Talk. And to my knowledge, we're one of the only media outlets that has done that in the fishing space. Some people have tried or claim that they have no bias, but then behind closed doors, they're taking large amounts of free product from certain companies in exchange for reviews or getting favored treatment from certain companies over others. We really just try not to play those games around here, and I've learned my lesson a long time ago. Free gear isn't worth it. I'd rather have free reign of my opinions than free gear in exchange for them. And if you've been on social media over the last week or two, chances are you've got your ICAST news from one of two camps. Either someone who hates ICAST and everything about it and will refuse to like any piece of new gear that comes out at it, or on the flip side, someone who has invested time, money, and resources into a company at ICAST whose job it is to speak positively about their products no matter what. So the bias goes both ways. If you're getting all of your ICAST product release news from someone who, owns a JDM tackle shop and has a vested interest in selling baits and tackle from very specific niche companies that are not at ICAST, the information that you're consuming is biased. biased. But on the flip side, if all of your ICAST new product release news is coming from someone at a booth who works for one of these companies or who is affiliated or sponsored by one of these companies that's releasing these products, the information you're consuming is also biased. So the bias goes both ways. And my goal here today is to give you neither. To be a middle-of-the-road, nuanced, thoughtful, but honest look at all of the gear that I was lucky enough to see and touch over the past week. So bear with me. I feel like I'm coming off of like a bender here. I have very little sleep, very late flights, long days, but this is one of my favorite episodes of the year, and I hope that it delivers. So let's start at the beginning here. For anybody who's not really familiar with how ICAST works, we'll run through it super quick. I know we've covered this in years past, but if you're new, it's worth repeating. It's the largest fishing trade show of the year. And the last few years, it's been held in Orlando, Florida from Tuesday through Friday. And unlike something like the Bassmaster Classic Expo, which is also a huge expo and trade show, that is open to the public. This is a true industry trade show, meaning that the public can't just walk in. You either have to be working for a company at one of the booths that has bought these booth spaces, you have to be a retail buyer looking for brands or gear to carry in your store, or you have to be a member of the media. And we here at Tackle Talk fall into that third category. So I don't get invited by any of the brands or companies down there. I pay my own way down there, my own flight, my own hotel, my own food, all of that so that I can attend as sort of a middle-of-the-road media member. So I went down for Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday this year, and my goal this year, just like it's been the past few years, is to go painstakingly, booth by booth, showroom to showroom, and see and feel as much gear as I physically can in 3 days. And over the years, it's been an invaluable tool for me selfishly because I've got to briefly use and feel gear that I wouldn't otherwise have the chance to. So way before I had, like an NRX, I knew what an NRX felt like because I had picked them up and played with them at events like this. Hundreds of rods and reels I now have a general feel for without ever owning one because I'm just that dork that walks around and picks up and tests everything that I can get my hands on. And for a tackle nerd like me, it's heaven. And I know that everybody's all jaded now and like, oh, ICAST sucks, or oh, it's all knockoff garbage, rah, 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 right? Everybody does that. But to me, it's the opposite. As someone who just loves fishing gear, how can you not love an entire convention center full of almost every piece of gear you've ever heard of? It really is one of my favorite weeks of the year. And even though this episode is a beast to put together and record and edit and get out in time for that following Tuesday, it's well worth it in my eyes. So this year's format is going to be a little different for this episode. First, I'm going to do a full walkthrough of the showroom floor to the biggest companies and the biggest names in fishing. So we're going to start there because that really sets the tone for everything else. So we got to see, what are the big boys up to? What's Shimano up to? Daiwa, St. Croix, Lew's, Rapala, Strike King, Z-Man, those type of folks, because those are the companies that have the largest resources and in return should, and I say that, in kind of air quotes here, should have the best new products. So we'll go booth by booth and we will give you a full rundown of the new products that we saw with interviews from the folks at those companies. And one thing that you'll notice over the years that I've kind of changed about this episode is who I talk to. It used to be my first year or two, I just interviewed the anglers that were at the booth because they were who I knew, they were who everybody else seemed to be wanting to talk to. So it seemed like the right move to ask those anglers, those sponsored anglers, about those new products. But over the years, I've actually learned who at each of these companies is going to give me the most information, and it's usually not the anglers. I don't care about, grabbing the biggest name or who draws the most clicks or any of that. I want to talk to the people at these companies who have the most knowledge of the product. And I can promise you, in like 90 to 95% of the cases, that is not an angler. That is someone who works for the company specifically. And there are a few exceptions that you'll hear as we go, and you've kind of probably picked up on over the years, but I get 100 times more useful information out of, the vice president of product development of these companies or someone like that than I do their sponsored anglers. And I've seen it 100 times. If you want to pull back the curtain of how ICAST works here, these anglers who are giving you these like videos and stuff you're seeing on social media, and I'm not faulting them for it. It's their job. It's what they're paid to do. but they roll up to these booths and they find, the product guy, the person that actually knows what they're talking about, and they ask, hey, what am I supposed to say? And that product development person gives them like the 5 or 6 bullet points that they're supposed to hit, and then that angler immediately turns around, gets on camera, and rolls through what he was just told to say, which again is fine. They use this gear, they like this gear, but they might not know all the technical stuff. I'm not saying that they're completely disingenuous with it. They just have to kind of be coached a little bit on what to say and the technology that's gone into these products and what's different from the past version and all of that. I would rather just get it straight from the horse's mouth. I would rather go talk to the person that actually painstakingly developed this new product, and they're the ones that can give us the info on it. Tackle Talk is all about information. We're not really about trying to draw the most, eyeballs or be the most flashy thing. I want to give you guys info that you might not get other places. And when we have a genuine interview with these people, I can have a conversation, really poke and prod and ask these sort of direct questions sometimes, whether it's while we're recording or not. If you're listening to these clips that we'll have in this episode, this might be like, 1/10 of my conversation with these people. I wanted to get a sound bite, but then I sit down and I really kind of press them on some of the questions that I want to know. And those are the things that if I asked, their main sponsored angler, they have no idea. They're not going to be able to give me the answer to that. But the product development folks can, because they're, again, the ones whose fingers made these products. So again, for the billionth time here, I just want to talk to the person that can give us the most information so that I can learn and absorb all of that and then bring that back to this episode. So after the big names, like your big companies that you're normally used to seeing, then we're going to walk around and find some products that I think were truly, I know this word gets thrown around a lot and a lot of times it gets used sarcastically, but I'm going to take you around the show floor and find the products and companies that I thought were actually innovative and cool new ideas that are being brought to market, and some things that were sort of diamonds in the rough in terms of the products at ICAST that might not have got the most shine, but I think are definitely worth the conversation here. Some big companies, some small companies, but really cool products nonetheless. So then we're going to start to talk about some overarching themes here at ICAST this year, one of which was quite a surprise that I really didn't see coming. And then after that, we're going to briefly hit on which of the products won the ICAST awards this year, and then we'll flip the script and tell you who I thought the real ICAST winners were as we crown our Tackle Talk ICAST Best in Show with our top 5 products. And then finally, we'll end the show with a little comic relief as I give you our worst in show products that we saw around the show floor at ICAST 2025. Okay, deep breaths here. I know that was a lot to get started here, but this is a real beast of an episode every year, and I just want to provide some context and sort of set the stage the best I can before we really get into this. Okay, now that that's all out of the way, we have sort of a lay of the land heading into ICAST 2025. Now, let's walk in together. We're going down the escalator. The big ICAST banner is right above us, and we are about to walk through those big doors to the ICAST show floor. All right, our first stop on the show floor is going to be at Daiwa, one of the big 800-pound gorillas in the room. Daiwa always shows up for events like this, a great display. They always have some stellar new products. You can always count on Daiwa, and this year was no exception. We have 4 new reels of interest to us and 1 line of rods that I wanted to make sure that we spent some time on. So before you hear my thoughts, I went and met with Chris Martin of Daiwa, who, like we said at the top of this show, is the guy that I trust to give me the most information on new products from Daiwa. He's the guy that I ask personally if I have questions, and if I have a choice of anybody to run us through anything at Daiwa, Chris is the man. And so with that, let's head to the ICAST show floor to talk with Chris Martin of Daiwa.
So, like you said, we're starting out from the entry-level price points, and we're going to work our way up. So starting out with that entry level, we have an awesome new bait caster here. This is the new Aired. Okay, so this is an Aired 80 size model. So this is our $99 price point, a true $99 price point, entry-level bait casting reel. What makes this reel amazing for what it is, number one, it's that 80 size. So it's nice and compact. It fits into anybody's hands, whether, you're a grown man our age, looking for something really comfortable in your hand, or you're a lady that wants to get into fishing, or a kid that wants to get into fishing. It's a comfortable reel at a great price. Now, along with it being that great price and that great size, it's also part of the LC concept family. So it uses that long cast concept braking mechanism, going to allow anglers to get long distance casts, but also because it has that magnetic braking system, you're also going to be able to prevent backlashes as well. So you're getting a lot of technology in a little $99 package. Now, off camera, I don't have it in hand right now, we also have the aired rods. It's about a $49 rod to go with this $100 reel. So you're out the door with a $150 combo that feels like it should cost a heck of a lot more. So that's starting out with the new aired 80. Now, moving up in this lineup, we have the new Tatula X. So this is the step up from the aired, and this is the model that's going to be replacing the Tatula CT. Okay, so this is the new Tatula X. What makes this model new, innovative, unique, and upgraded from the CT is going to be the integration of the hyperdrive system. So hyperdrive technology was something that we saw originally developed in the zillions category, right? That $400 reel. Now we're bringing that technology down as we've gotten better at manufacturing it. We're bringing it down into this $149 price point reel. So you're getting the hyperdrive DigiGear, that 3-point contact gearing system for buttery smooth rotation and truly longer lasting gears as well. Along with that, we've got the Hyper Tough clutch, so rock solid in and out of gear. The Hyper Armed housing is that aluminum housing that just gives it plenty of durability and keeps all the internal mechanisms rock solid in place. Now, talking about that clutch system, of course, it being a Tatula, that clutch system also manipulates that really awesome T-wing level wind system. Can't be a Tatula without a T-wing, right, Andrew? So that T-wing level wind system is going to be enabling you guys to get longer distance cast, a little bit more accuracy and things of that nature. Now, just like the aired model, this is also an LC concept reel. So it's got that LC braking system, that long cast braking system, allowing anglers to get as much distance as they possibly can. So whether you're a bank angler trying to cover the whole pond, or you're on a boat and you're trying to sling out a lipless as far as you can, that LC concept is going to help you do it. Now, this reel does have an upgraded braking mechanism compared to the aired models, so it's going to be a little bit better at controlling your backlashes and a little bit more accuracy in dialing that reel in. Now, there's one critical thing that I want to talk to you guys, especially since this is that entry-level reel, is that zero adjuster. That cast control knob there is our zero adjuster. These reels are ready to fish out of the box. Do not need to make any adjustments to that zero adjuster. The reason being is that zero adjuster acts more as a governor to keep that spool centered in the housing. So whatever you do, do not back that knob off when you start fishing with these. Keep that as it is. That spool needs to stay centered in the housing so that you get the benefit of that magnetic braking system. That spool needs to stay near that magnetic braking system for you to get that cast control advantage. We can talk more about zero adjuster. You guys can find a lot more information online about it, but just remember, leave that alone. Any adjustments for your lure weights, wind conditions, adjust them using that mag force. Now we're stepping over into the spinning category. So spinning category, we're going to start off with the awesome Ballistic MQLT. Now this is actually our 2025 ICAST Best Freshwater Reel Award winner. We're very proud of that. What makes the Ballistic MQLT new and different and upgraded compared to the previous generation model is the integration of the air drive design. The previous generation model was a great MQ reel, but now we're bringing in the air drive components. So we have the air drive rotor, the air drive bail, and the air drive spool. All of these components serve to lighten the weight of the reel, making that rotation super reactive, super easy to move that handle, but also not sacrificing any strength. When you throw this handle on that, you don't feel any of that weird oscillation or wobble or any of that kind of weird stuff going on. Just nice, smooth rotation. So when you're really trying to feel a bottom contact bait or something like that, you don't have any extra vibrations dampening those bites coming down the rod. Now, of course, it's an MQ body style, so we have that frame screw less design. No frame screws at all. That entire body panel seals onto that reel body, preventing any kind of corrosion or things like that from getting into the reel body. Upgraded EVA style teardrop ball knob. So super comfortable in the hand, whether your hands are wet, dry, covered in fish slime, doesn't really matter. And it wouldn't be a ballistic MQ without the mag seal technology. That's what makes this reel a hybrid freshwater and saltwater orientation reel. So an awesome reel coming at you at that $239 price point. So very much affordable for the inshore and higher end freshwater guys as well. Now we're stepping into the high end, guys, the latest and the greatest in terms of finesse style bass fishing. This is the new Luvius ST SF LT. A lot to unpack in that name. Now it does come available in a larger size. I know I'm holding a 1000. The reason I'm holding this 1000 is because it is truly and potentially, I need to confirm this, we're still working on it, but this could potentially be the lightest 1000 size reel available on the market right now, coming in at just 4.8 ounces. So we've got an incredibly lightweight reel. The whole concept on this reel is designed using Zion construction frame and a Zion construction rotor. So Zion is our carbon resin material. It's incredibly rigid, extremely lightweight, and totally corrosion proof. There's no metal in the construction of Zion, so it cannot be corroded. So it keeps that reel incredibly lightweight. So again, it's the Luvius MQ model, so it still has that MQ style body on it and the full entire air drive design. We have the air drive rotor, the air drive bail, the air drive spool. What makes this one really cool though, it has the air drive shaft. That air drive shaft is a very unique component to some of the air drive design reels. What it does is it allows for an incredibly smooth oscillation of that spool moving up and down. So when you're fishing those light lines, and a lot of times if you don't have a really smooth oscillation, you get line overwraps and things like that cause issues when you go to take that next cast. With that air drive shaft, you get super smooth and even line lay back onto the reel. Obviously very shallow spool designs, as you guys can see. The 1000, 2000, and 2500s are going to be best fished with anything from 4, 6, 8, and 10 pound test braid lines, finesse lines. That's what it's going to be designed for. So the guys that are targeting bass, you got a great, really awesome finesse style reel, but we also intend to see a lot of guys fishing this one for trout, panfish, crappie, walleye, things of that nature. Going to be an awesome reel. Super, super lightweight, just adding more sensitivity too. So that's the full spread, coming from a $99 price point all the way up to a $429 awesome finesse reel.
Okay, that was great. Chris did an awesome job running us through those 4 new reels from Daiwa, all hitting very different price points and made with a different purpose in mind. So let's break these down real quick. First, the AIRD, spelled AIRD, all capital letters. The first reel that he talked about in that clip immediately caught my eye because of the price tag. This reel is listed at an MSRP of $99, and that is a magic number to me. $99 and under for a tournament-ready reel is becoming somewhat of a unicorn these days, and to see a new $99 offering from a legacy company like Daiwa, you got to get excited for it. And I knew that it would be important to you all too. We have a lot of really budget-conscious anglers and newer anglers that listen to Tackle Talk. This right here is right up your alley. Is it the latest and greatest in terms of technology? No, but it felt darn good for $99. And you heard Chris say there, it's an 80 size reel, so it palms really great in your hand. Even for me, I have pretty small hands, but I didn't feel like at an 80 size, it was lacking anything on like the spool or overall size. You still have plenty of line capacity here, even though it's an 80 size. And you've got that LC braking system. Now, the one thing that people are going to probably try and complain about here is the graphite frame. But boys, the days of the good $99 aluminum framed reels are almost gone. The SLX, I think, from Shimano might be the only one still holding on, and it is holding on by a thread. And we will talk about that here in a little bit too. But I picked up this reel probably 10 times over the last week as I was making my way around the show floor, and every time I just remember saying it feels more expensive than $99. Some $99 reels feel like a $99 $99 reel. And some $99 reels feel like a $50 reel, to be honest. But this is Daiwa, what we're talking about here. They have a track record of doing things right. I'm also pumped that this gives us a true aired combo now. So the aired rods have been out for a long time, and they're the rods that I always used to see at my local fishing expo being sold for like $40 or whatever, 2 for $60. I think their MSRP is like $49 or $59, but those are dang good rods for around $50. Very serviceable. And now this gives you a true $150-ish combo that, in my opinion, probably feels more like a $200 to $220 combo. So the Daiwa Aired 80, $99 was a winner in my book right off the bat. The next thing that we have here is the Tatula X, which Chris told us is replacing the old Tatula CT. But your big difference here is that you're going to get what we were going to call passed down technology. That's technology or features that were originally in a much more expensive product from a company, in this case, reels, that eventually gets brought down to lower price point reels once that technology is no longer brand new. So in the reel game especially, patience is a virtue. Companies often unveil their latest and greatest technology and their highest end reels first, and then it sort of trickles down to some of those lower priced reels once that new factor has worn off a little bit and those cheaper reels are due for a refresh. So the Tatula X is getting that hyperdrive design. That is being passed down from its origins in like the Zillion lineup. The Zillion is a $350 reel. The Tatula X is $149, so $200 cheaper, and you're still getting that hyperdrive, which is like a specialized gearing, I think, that hyperdrive digi gear that has a little larger teeth in the traction wheel. Basically, you're getting a stronger gearing while you're still maintaining smoothness. That's how I understand Daiwa's hyperdrive. But with that $50 increase from something like an Aired that we talked at the beginning about, you're getting that aluminum frame now, so you're getting a much more durable reel. You're not getting that flex in the reel when you put a lot of stress on it. You're also getting that Tatula T-wing design. You're getting a slightly upgraded LC braking system. All of that for a $50 price bump, which isn't bad at all. So if you're in that range, 100 to 150, it might be worth the look to go up to that Tatula X if you have the extra $50. Now, something interesting here that I thought was, kind of stuck out in my mind as we were talking to Chris is he basically said, don't touch the tension knob on this reel. That's what he meant when he said that zero adjuster. He was talking about touching the tension knob. And Chris is basically saying, don't play with that tension knob on the Tatula X, which is interesting to me because I'm always playing with my tension knob from bait to bait. I know it's not ideal. I know that I should dial it in with the brakes versus the tension knob, but that tension knob is always so easy. It's right there on the outside. It's right there at your fingertips. Your thumb can do it real quick, and that gives you that easy kind of on-the-fly adjustment. Again, I know it's not what it's meant for, but that's what I use it for, and as long as you're good at thumbing your spool, you're fine. But apparently Daiwa is recommending on that Tatula X to leave that tension knob in its factory setting spot and relying on the braking and not the tension knob. The tension knob apparently from the factory is already set where it needs to be to keep that spool properly aligned and have the right amount of pressure on it, something I did not know, but now I do. Okay, next up here you have the Ballistic MQ-LT, which, as you heard in the clip there, spoiler alert, won best freshwater reel. But the difference here from the old Ballistic is that now you have that air drive. So that means a new rotor, a new bail, a new spool, which gives you, I think, weight reduction and less startup force needed to start turning that handle. So it's also got that mag seal, which basically I guess would mean that you can call this like a brackish water reel, if you want to call it that, meaning it can do both freshwater and saltwater. So inshore guys probably love this reel. But this, to be honest, just wasn't my speed. I didn't love the handle. I didn't love the knobs. Those big, oversized EVA foam teardrop knobs always seem cheap to me. Maybe for saltwater, it's preferred. I don't know. I'm not a saltwater or an inshore guy. I don't know. But I've never been a fan of that type of knob. I'd rather just have the standard, semi-flat, I don't know what you call them, TPE or super hard rubber grips. That's just me. But again, being a, can-do saltwater, can-do freshwater reel, it doesn't surprise me that I didn't gravitate more toward the Ballistic. But at a $249 price point, probably something that I'm not going to be picking up. I know there are people that love these reels. It just has never been one of my top options, and the little refresh that it got this year didn't really change my opinion on that. And finally here, we have the most expensive reel out of the bunch, the Luvius. Now, that is a high-end, boundary-pushing, finesse spinning reel. And Chris said it could be the lightest 1,000 size spinning reel out there, and I believe it. I picked it up. It is feather light. They've got it listed, I think, at 4.8 ounces. It felt every bit that light. Stupid light, you might say. But he talked about that Zion frame and rotor, so it's all like carbon resin, no metal. All of the air drive stuff you heard about with the ballistic is in this reel too, but with an added air drive shaft. So even smoother, even lighter, which makes sense as price goes up. It's pretty simple. Your reel typically gets lighter and smoother and better feeling. But this reel is cool because it's kind of like the bougiest high-end light line multi-species ultra finesse reel that I've ever seen. And that reel is meant to be paired with a very high-end rod because as you get more expensive with your rod, they get lighter and lighter. And to keep that balance right, you need a reel that complements that. So this helps maintain that balance that you want out of those nicer and lighter rods and keep that balance point consistent. And that's what Daiwa did with this Luvius. Now, it comes at a price, at a big price. It's going to retail at $429. But if you love high-end gear and you like the whole light line ultra finesse game, I will say it was smooth as can be and very, very light. All right, and that was the new reels from Daiwa, but we still have one more product we need to hit before we leave the Daiwa booth, and that's going to be the newest line of rods that they have, which is the 2025 Tatula Cork Bass Rods. So for the scoop on that, let's head back to the show floor and talk once again with Chris Martin. Chris, we are standing in front of the Tatula cork rods here, which I'm personally excited about. Everybody who listens to the show knows that I am a cork guy through and through, so these are right up my alley. Clean-looking rods, very technique-specific, some cool actions in these. Can you walk us through a little bit about these rods, why they were made, and kind of what niche these fill in the Daiwa lineup?
Yeah, absolutely. So the Tatula cork line, I mean, we've had the Tatula corks going on for, a couple generations now, and we've got some fans, like you said, and we wanted to bring in, just a little bit extra to these rods, giving them a little bit more of a better feeling to them. And again, we're keeping with that technique-specific orientation. So what's really new on these is the integration of Daiwa's SVF Nano Plus graphite. So that's that super volume fiber. This is technology that we've previously only seen on our really high-end rods, things like the Zillion series when we had those. So the SVF Nano Plus is a high-density graphite with uniformly distributed resin throughout the graphite strand. So what that means is that you get an incredibly light rod, a very responsive rod, but because you have that uniform distribution of that resin through the graphite, you get an incredible energy transfer. By that I mean bite detection. Bite detection, you can say a lot of things about it, but really what it means to me is when that tip section of the rod, when that line touches the tip, when that fish takes a bite, it sends that energy down the rod to the handle incredibly quickly with that Nano Plus graphite. So it allows the angler to be a little bit more reactive and able to feel those bites a little bit easier and react to them quicker. You combine that with the X45 cross-wrapping of the actual SVF graphite, and you get a rod that is essentially doesn't have any kind of twist to it, any kind of inconsistencies, great accuracy. So, I mean, it's just one of those rods that, I mean, at that $149 price point, it really fills the niche of the guy that is, they've gone from, a $50 combo, and then they wanted to upgrade to, a bait casting tackle. So they tried our Tatula XTs, and they liked the XTs. They had great success with the XTs, but they thought, there's something else. There's something more that I can do, and I want a cork rod now. So now we have the Tatula, cork rods, upgraded graphite, coming in at a $149 price point. So it's just that next extra level. Guys that are, kind of taking their time getting into, the bait casting and spinning, bass fishing, they can go into it at that incremental level from $100 to $150 and not feel like they're going to have that kind of buyer's remorse.
So when you look down at these rods that we have right in front of us, your casting rods, for instance, you have some that are split grip, some that are full cork handle too. What's the decision process in deciding which of these rods gets a full cork versus which you guys like to go with split grip?
Yeah, so I mean, we definitely see more of the split grip design on the rods that are oriented for more lighter weight presentations, okay? So you're talking about, whether you're throwing small jigs, quarter ounce, half ounce jigs and things like that, you're going to have a little bit more of a split grip. Same for some of the spinnerbait style rods, the moving bait versatiles, the universal style rods. Those are going to have those split grips. When you start getting into frog rods, heavy jig rods, punching rods, things along those lines, that's where we step it up to that full cork, just to give you that extra little bit of oomph, as it were, allowing you to get those solid hook sets that you need.
What impresses me about this, in a budget lineup of $149, $150, you have everything in front of us from a 7.9 A-rig and swim bait rod to BFS rods. There's 2 BFS rods in this lineup too. Are there any challenges in trying to make a lineup that covers so many spectrums at that price point?
I mean, our factories are really phenomenal. They take a lot of care, and we do a lot of development, sometimes with the pros, sometimes with our pro staffers, to really kind of develop a lineup that is, going to cover all of the bases. And that's what Tatula is designed to be, is, to cover all the things that an angler really needs. And when it comes to developing a rod like this and actually getting them created, Daiwa owns the factories that we produce our rods in. We don't outsource that production to anywhere. So when we say we have a rod that we really want to build, and they've seen our success with the previous series, they answer the call, and they do it willingly.
So there you go. You heard right there, sort of the same thing as the reels. You're getting some trickle-down features from high-end rods like the Zillion, and with that, you're getting increased sensitivity here compared to past generations. So these newer Tatula rods from Daiwa have cork handles. They're all black with that Tatula kind of spider web look in light gray that's sort of intertwined in the design. And when I saw them in pictures really early on, I thought, here we go again, right? A really over-the-top spider-type design that's always been kind of one of my pain points with a lot of the Tatula stuff, is like, just give me a regular, clean looking rod or reel. I don't need all the spider stuff. But when you see it in person, it actually looks great. It does not look as flashy or as weird as like the pictures themselves look. That design is really muted, and it almost at like a quick glance looks more of like a lightning or a crack type look to it than it does a spider web. So I actually thought they looked pretty good, and I don't say that about a lot of the flashier Tatula stuff. But the thing that impressed me the most by far about these rods, besides the fact that they come in at a $149 price point, was the huge line of Technique-specific models that they included here. I mean, you've got like 20 plus models in this line, and they covered almost every end of the spectrum. There was a little Ned Rig spinning rod that felt awesome, that was a 7-foot light, extra fast, that would make a fun little drop shot rod or a creek rod. They went all the way up to a 7.2 medium heavy fast power spinning rod. So that is a very beefy spinning rod for bass fishing stuff. But then on the casting rod side, they went from a 7.9 heavy moderate that's for like big swim baits and big A-rigs, all the way down to not one, but 2 BFS models. There was a 610 light moderate, and then there was a 610 light extra fast. And I've got to tell you, you guys know I'm not a BFS guy, but if you are looking for a budget BFS rod, people are sleeping on these 149 cork Tatulas. I played with both of them. You all know that BFS stuff can be very, very expensive. Here is your budget-friendly rod option in that BFS realm. But even your regular models, like the 7.3 medium heavy fast, felt great, and I came out of this event thinking that $149 Tatula rod should be at the top of people's lists for like must check out rods in that $150 price point. Really, really nice new Tatula rods here from Daiwa. All right, everybody, that is just stop number 1 here. So buckle up. We have so much to cover. But as we continue to move around the show floor here, it only makes sense. That was Daiwa. Now let's go over to the other big dog in the rod and reel game. I would say you're 1 and 2 on almost everybody's lists. We got to go over and see what Shimano's been up to. So to get the rundown on all the new products over at Shimano, we're going to check in with our buddy Alex Davis.
So we have Corrado 150, same great Corrado 150. It's Corrado 150M. They put an MGL spool 3 in it. So what that's going to do, it's going to give you more distance on your cast. I got to test it about 5-6 months, and it's roughly like 15 to 20 foot. So it's just it's a faster startup inertia, so it just gets the bait cranking with more speed at the beginning of your cast. Noski, 6 different models, all the way from 500 to 5,000. The new features, they put a one-piece bail, Xfinity Drive. Xfinity Drive gives you more power under load when you're fighting a fish. And last but not least, anti-twist fin right here. So what that does, anyone who has a spinner reel knows when that line goes over top the reel, it kind of, you think, I'll cast that out. When you cast it out, it comes out in 3 pieces. It's real annoying. That fixes that. It puts the line on the spool. It's not going to go over top anymore. And last but not least, we have Outlier. Outlier, there's going to be 6 different models in it, from a 7.4 all the way up to an 8-foot double extra heavy, 7.4 medium heavy. It's probably my little baby. I like the one Mag Draft small swim baits, and that thing's perfect. It's going to have High Power X, Spiral X, CI4 reel seat, Fuji guides, and this right here is probably that handle. It's a custom spiral EVA handle. It's really comfortable. A lot of time with these bigger rods, it's big cork, not very comfortable to use. This thing is sweet. It feels great casting all day. You don't get like fatigue or anything. So check out Outlier, check out Noski, get you some Corrados, and go catch a bunch of fish.
Okay, so you heard there from Alex. Now, Shimano's a little different because Shimano doesn't it seems like a lot of their product development people actually talk to the media. They seem to designate 1 or 2 people to do all of those media hits. So Alex is one of them. Alex is great. He's been an angler for a long time. He's been with Shimano for a long time. But it seems like if you look at clips from anything from Shimano, you're going to see one of their anglers or JP or someone like that be the person that really gives you the clip. So because it was fairly short, we're going to dive into this a little bit more based on what I was able to figure out from talking to people that work for Shimano a little bit more off camera and off microphone to give you guys the rundown on all 3 of these. So let's start with the Shimano Corrado 150M. Now, I'm not going to spend a ton of time on this one because there's not much to say. The Shimano Corrado 150M is essentially the Shimano Corrado 150 MGL, which has already been out for years. The only difference there really is that there's a new MGL 3 spool that they put in it. So their latest spool, they just swapped that out inside, and they updated the color on the outside so that it matches the 200M. Other than that, it's pretty much the same reel as the Shimano Corrado 150 MGL, which many of you might already have. So what I've been told is that this is basically a play to do away with all of the reels that have MGL in their name, because almost every reel from Shimano that's come out lately has an MGL spool. So it's not really a differentiator anymore, and it makes no sense to call some reels MGL and some not when all of them have MGL at this point. So I think they would just like to kind of get all of those reels back in the same family and not have these weird names that don't really make a whole lot of sense. They want to bring everything back into that M family. That's the letter we're on now, M. Before this, it was K. Before that, like you go backwards. Now it's M. So they'd rather have a Shimano Corrado 150M with an MGL spool in it versus calling it the 150 MGL, which I actually like because I'm all for simplifying names and family lines of reels. That's one thing that I think Daiwa does do that confuses me a lot. They have 870,000 different types of Tatulas, and it's hard to keep track of. Shimano is trying to simplify their product names and make it easier to understand. I think that's at least a good thing. But as far as excitement level, after seeing it and playing with it and digging deeper, I'm not really excited about this because it's a reel that has essentially already been out, just with a new name, a slightly swapped spool, and a new color. It's a great reel. Don't get me wrong. I will probably buy some at some point because I love my Corrados in general, but I'm not buying it because it's super new or noteworthy in my opinion or something awesome. It's just because if you like Corrados and you want a 150 size, if you would have normally bought a 150 MGL, now you're going to buy a 150M because that's just the new name of it. All right, and then we get to the new Shimano Noski. And this one hurts me. And I've said this for a few years now. At the $99 price point, the Noski is maybe my personal recommendation above everything else. I really don't know if there's a better $99 reel out there than the current silver Shimano Noski. But folks, that unfortunately is changing. So we are now getting the brand new Shimano Noski FD. And as far as tech and feel goes, it feels fine. And you're getting that new one-piece bail. You're getting that infinity drive. You get the anti-twist fin that they all put in there. That's all fine and dandy, but there are negatives that come with this upgrade. One negative is that I think this reel is ugly as sin. There's no sugarcoating it. I don't like the way it looks. The old silver Noski was like timeless looking. It goes with any rod. Just a really classic looking reel. It looks like what a Stratic used to look like. And that's what a spinning reel in my mind, if I like picture a spinning reel, I picture like a silver Stratic, a good, clean silver spinning reel. Well, now they have changed that to this sort of off kind of steel blue, almost navy frame. And then they've got this muted burnt orange spool on it. I don't know what else to say except this reel is ugly. I find it hard to believe that you're going to find a lot of people that say that this new reel, this weird blue and orange, looks better than the previous generation. And this new Noski FD is replacing the old silver version. It's not just being added to the lineup. It's not an upgrade option. This is replacing the old silver Noski. So out with the silver, in with the blue and orange. Not a fan of that. But the other issue here is that we're getting hit with a 10% price increase, going from $99 to $109. Now, that might not seem like a lot to you, but that $99 threshold, like we talked about with Daiwa, is holy territory in the bass fishing world. Quality offerings under $99 are harder and harder to come by, and that Noski was a big part of that, but no more. We are now looking at $109 for a slightly upgraded and much uglier reel from Shimano here. Now, I'm also going to go out on a little bit of a limb, and I'm going to say that if the Noski got a refresh and went up in price this year out of that $99 price point, which it is, we just heard that, don't be surprised if the aluminum framed standard Shimano SLX at $99 doesn't follow suit somewhere down the road. I'm just not sure how much longer that $99 SLX is going to hang on at this rate, especially when we saw what they just did with the Noski. So I'm not a fan of the new Noski, which hurts a lot. I'm not impressed with the 150M because you're not really getting a whole lot new. So you're probably sitting there saying, Andrew, is there anything from Shimano that you did like? Well, yeah, there was one thing, and that's the new Shimano Outlier swim bait rods. Now, I know this isn't for everybody, but if you like big baits, even if you like mag drafts and, things like that, these 6 rods in that swim bait lineup and that glide bait lineup from Shimano felt pretty darn good for $349. And now again, I can hear some people in their cars saying, but Andrew, $349, that's very expensive for a rod. And you're right, but when it comes to these type of baits, people, myself included, are throwing $150 to $200 baits. Each bait is $150 to $200 sometimes. So that nice rod is only the cost of like 2 baits. Now, I know that sounds like me coping a little bit, and maybe it is, but the big swim bait game is expensive. Like it or not, it's not a budget activity, unfortunately. And that goes for a lot of the baits, that goes for a lot of the rods, a lot of the reels, everything. Everything is bigger, everything's more expensive. You're almost getting more into musky territory than you are getting into bass territory. And everybody knows if you've ever shot for musky stuff, you put the word musky on the front of something and the price goes up like 3x. So swim baits are kind of in that same boat a little bit. And originally, I thought that this new Shimano Outlier was just a beefed up X-Pride B because that's what it looks like when you see it for the first time. But after digging, it's not. You've got some different stuff in this rod that you don't have in an X-Pride B. So you're getting the Spiral X and the High Power X in this manufacturing process. The X-Pride B just has the High Power X, not the Spiral X. So your next question should be, what is Spiral X? Well, it's a proprietary sort of infinity carbon tape, I think they say, which Shimano then wraps around the mandrel of that rod during the production. It's really seamless. There's no gaps when they wind it, anything like that. And it's laid in this sort of spiral pattern of 2 opposing directions, so almost like diagonal with each other. And then when that's layered correctly, they call that a unidirectionally strong blank. So long story short, it's stronger, which is good for big, heavy glide baits. So you've also got the addition of double-footed Fuji K-frame guides with SIC inserts, so way more durable than regular guides because you have those 2 contact points on the rod, not just 1. So every single guide is double-footed all the way up. That's really nice to see in a big swim bait rod. My current rod that I use, that Megabass P5 Tequila Baccarat, is the same way, and that's one of the reasons that I really like it. That rod has those strong guides because there are those 2 contact contact points on the blank. This rod does that too in a significantly cheaper price point than the P5. So that's cool to see. And then you also get that spiral EVA handle that they say are like heat wrapped and supposedly make casting all day more comfortable. That was one of the things that I was a little concerned about, was it just looks weird. It looks like it might feel odd in your hand. When you're working that bait though, your hand and your palm doesn't really even make contact with that EVA part. It mostly stays on the reel seat. So I guess that's kind of good and bad. On the good side, you don't have to worry about that spiral feeling weird if you don't like it because you're not making contact with it a whole lot of times. On the other side, really the only time you're getting the benefit of what they're calling, a great upgrade in the spiral EVA handle is when you're making a cast. Almost all the rest of the time, you're not even feeling that when you're palming that reel. So it's kind of like it's good because you don't make contact with it. It's also probably not a giant deal because you're only really feeling it for, 3 seconds while you make a cast. They've also got 6 rods in this lineup. Now, the 2 that I think are going to apply to us most are going to be that 7.4 medium heavy. That's rated for 1/2 ounce lures all the way up to 2 ounce lures. So that's going to handle almost everything that we will do as regular bass anglers. Your small to mid-size glides are okay on that. Your mag drafts, any sort of harness swim bait, you're all good there. But then as you get up into the 6 and 7 inch bait territory, you start to tread that 2 ounce line pretty close. And then depending on how it's manufactured, so whether it's plastic or resin, all that stuff kind of determines how heavy that bait is going to be. So if you need to go to the next step up, that's going to be the 7.9 medium heavy plus is what they call it. That is rated for 1 to 4 ounce lures. So in a perfect world, I wish you could almost combine these 2 rods because I like the shorter length of that 7.4. The 7.9 feels pretty long for someone that's used to using a 7-foot rod for glide baits, but I like the power of that 7.9 medium heavy plus a little better. But either way, those are your 2 main ones that I think we need to worry about. The next step up and the most practical rod after that would be like the 7.11 heavy. That's rated for 1 to 5 ounce lures. And then you get into some bulkier options from there for even heavier baits if you need to go up. But for $349, this rod will be very popular, I think, amongst the swim bait bros. So if you're looking for a new big bait rod, I think it's definitely one worth checking out. So that's about it from Shimano that we're going to cover. There were a few other things, but to be honest, they don't really apply to me, or I think probably the heavy majority of people listening. The new Sustain, I just feel like it's not a very popular reel to me or anybody around here that I know or people that listen. It's $300 plus, and at that rate, I would just save some money and buy a Vanford for what I do most of the time. The X-Sense B also came out, but again, you're talking about a $600 spinning reel. I think I'm crazy sometimes to pay $250 for a spinning reel. $600 is still way out of my realm at the moment, and I'm assuming most of yours as well. So overall, a pretty disappointing year from Shimano. I feel like they kind of mailed it in this year for the $400 and under freshwater crowd. The 150M isn't really new, except for a slightly upgraded spool. I'm not a fan of the update they did to the Noski. I'd rather have the old one. The Sustain doesn't get me excited. The X-Sense B is out of my price range, and the Outlier is a cool rod if you're into big swim baits and big baits. That's really all you're getting out of Shimano this year in a nutshell. Okay, let's keep moving here and stick to the rod and reel, folks, and we are going to make our way over to St. Croix. And there is one big new offering from St. Croix that I want to hit here, and it is expensive, but it's important for multiple reasons that we'll discuss after we talk with them. But first, let's hear from Vice President of Product Development, a guy whose fingerprints are all over this new rod and knows everything about St. Croix rods inside and out. It's Ryan Teach.
All right, everybody, we are here at St. Croix with Ryan Teach. We are looking at maybe the lightest rod I've picked up since I've walked around this show floor, the brand new Legend X2s from St. Croix. Ryan, can you walk us through everything that went into these rods?
Yeah, so angler feedback is a big thing that went into this. We took everything that we learned from Trigon 1, made it better. In a lot of cases, we made it smaller. In some cases, as you'll see in the casting rods, made it a little bit bigger where it needed to be, and we brought out Legend X2. So the big thing is model year 2022 was the last time we had a new blank pattern, okay? Victory, that was the big one. SC3 Plus, got really light there. So we had plans in the works to get lighter than Victory. We did, on average, as a series for Legend X2, and that came out with SC7. So as you know, SC stands for St. Croix. 7th is 7th generation carbon fiber, and our 7th generation carbon fiber is out in a big way, and it is our lightest and most durable rod series to date with Legend X2. So let's go through them with the casting rods. what you're going to see with the casting rods in comparison to Trigon 1, and it's not that Trigon 1 alienated a lot of people, it's just that it wasn't for everybody. So we took all that, it wasn't for everybody feedback, took that into account, and we changed up some of the geometry. So what you're going to notice on the casting reel seat right behind it is it carries some of that mass, or that kind of like that size from the reel seat right into about, let's say quarter to half an inch right behind the reel seat, so it doesn't get lost in the palm of your hand. Carbon fiber reel seat. It has a very hologram look to it. So there was some feedback from physics that people really questioned if that was really a carbon fiber reel seat. And it was because of the matte coating that we put over it. So we completely pulled the coating off of it. And if you get this reel seat out in the sun, it almost has that like hologram effect to it. Go up the rod, you go to SC7, 7th generation carbon fiber from St. Croix. Won't say a lot about it, but we have been playing around with graphene for a really long time. It's been tossed around in our industry for a long time, but I will say that we understand it really well. We use graphene in this rod kind of like rebar and concrete. It's a chemical bond between the carbon fiber. Works really well. Came out incredibly durable. Likely more durable than we ever expected. It will influence rods at St. Croix from here until we find something better than it. So keep going up the rod. You're going to find a set of Fuji Torzites on titanium frames. Comes with a Fuji Easy Keep as well, so you can put the hook keeper wherever you want to put it. If you want to put it in the split, if you want to put it above the reel seat, you can put it wherever you want. If you don't want to put it on the rod at all and do what I do and hook it right to the reel bridge, it's completely fine.
So to give people an idea of just how light these rods are, obviously I can feel them right here, but if you're listening in your car or you're driving to work or whatever right now, what are some of the ranges of like total weight of some of these rods?
So forgive me, I'll completely screw it up if I quoted them, so I won't, but I will tell you that they're right above 5 to 7% lighter than Victory, and then about 10 to 15% lighter than SC5, which is Legend Elite, which is really light as well. Your spinning rods are going to get even a little bit more lighter because we took material out. As you look at the spinning rods, the foregrip is about half the size as it was in Trigon 1, so Mojo Bass or Physics. We significantly tapered the profiles on the spinning rods because that's what we heard from you. We wanted to make it easier to get your fingers on the blank. You wanted to make it easier to have that like wand feel in your hand when it comes to the spinning rods. Still the same guide platform that you'll find on the casting rods with Fuji Torzites with titanium frames, but those spinning rods are going to get really, really light. That 6.8 MXF, super, super, super light. You also notice there's a couple changes that we made. We don't have the 710s in this lineup anymore. We have the 710 medium, moderate, fast, 710 medium, light, extra fast. Reason being, graphene helps significantly with rod recovery. We're casting as far with the 7.6s as we are the 710s. So by making that 710 change to the 7.6, it's easier to fit in a rod locker. It's a little easier to manage those fish boat side with the 7.6 versus the 710. It all went into Legend X2, which is really a product of angler feedback time and time again of what we can do to further refine this technology with Trigon, get lighter. I mean, we brought out Physics. Everybody was like, oh, St. Croix doesn't know how to make a light rod anymore. Yeah, we do. We were working on this the whole time. It was kind of fun to laugh in the shadows and know this was coming.
This is a culmination of, yes, just all of the flexing the muscles a little bit of everything that you're able to do, it looks like. And again, I was one of those people, I think I told you before we started recording, I complained about the original Trigon handles, and it's cool to see the differences because I walked up, I picked up this rod, and I said, wow, like that is total, because you can see as you walk up to it, yeah, it's still got a Trigon handle to it, and I said, here we go again, and I picked it up, and I said, oh, I love this. This feels so much better. So kudos to you guys, and again, not every rod is for everybody, but these are awesome rods. I can't wait to see what this does for St. Croix 2 years, 3 years, 4 years down the road too, because like you said, this stuff gets passed down at some point to new rods. So wink, wink, nod, nod. That could be cool to see. But we appreciate a really cool rod, the Legend X2 from St. Croix. Ryan, thank you so much.
Absolutely, thank you. Thank you everybody that gave us feedback on Trigon 1, the good, the bad, the negative, whatever it came. We appreciate it. Keep giving us that feedback. We'll keep watching comments. We do pay attention to all that stuff. So we're anglers too. So that's the goal at the end of the day, is just build the baddest fishing rod we can.
Okay, so there's a lot there. Let's start to unpack this. In simple terms, this is the lightest and most durable rod that St. Croix has ever met. And that's a lot coming from a company that's been in business for over 75 years. So a few things to note here. You probably heard a word that you may or may not have ever heard in your life before this episode of Tackle Talk, and it's the word graphene. I know I had never heard of graphene before. What is that? Is that grape-flavored caffeine? Graphene? Well, no. It's actually a material that's extracted extracted from graphite and is made up of pure carbon. So the element itself is like 200 times more resistant than steel. It is like 5 times lighter than aluminum. It's been used in hundreds of industries besides bass fishing. You've got electronics, construction, healthcare. Graphene itself is nothing new, but with the incorporation of graphene into these new Legend X2 rods from St. Croix, you're seeing them use it, from how I understand it, as a core of that rod. And then they're wrapping carbon fiber around it. I guess, disclaimer, I'm not an engineer. I'm just a redneck trying to understand these things that people are telling me. And sometimes they go a little bit over my head, but I think that's what he's saying here. So they're using it as like a strengthening agent. And you heard him make the comparison there to rebar and concrete. Now, that's something I do understand. It sounds like they're using graphene in that same way as like a middle of the rod strengthener there. But the other thing that I think I really, really liked to see here is I noticed the second that I saw them, before I even picked it up, before I talked to anybody, was that they have toned down those Trigon handles a lot, and they have refined them, and they are nowhere near what they were when they first came out. And when I saw the specs on this rod, I saw the word Trigon, and I thought, oh no, here we go again. Because you guys know, you can go back and listen to a year or two ago at ICAST. When they released those Trigon 1 handles on the new Mojos, I was vocally not a fan of them. I didn't like them. They were too boxy. They had too sharp of edge lines. They just weren't comfortable to me. And I said it at the time. It's all recorded. It's all on the internet. It lives forever. There's no hiding from it. I was not a fan of those Trigon handles. And you heard Ryan in that clip talk about listening to angler feedback and hearing that. And instead of digging their heels in like a lot of companies would and doubling down on whatever they've come out with, they listened and they made adjustments. And that is a story in and of itself. St. Croix is St. Croix for a reason. Many of you might not know this, but St. Croix is one of the few rod companies that's still family owned. They haven't sold out to a big private equity company yet. It's a family owned company. I think it's a husband and wife that still own it up there in like the upper Midwest. And that has its benefits, because instead of these big, private equity held companies that say, nope, we sank a bunch of money into developing those handles, we're going to keep them. St. Croix instead said, hey, some people liked them, some people didn't. Let's listen to both sides of this and find some sort of compromise in the middle for the newest products that we're going to be coming out with in the future. And that's a cool story from St. Croix. And it led, in my opinion, to a much better product. I would buy a rod with these handles on it, and I would not in a million years buy a rod that had those Trigon 1, the early Trigon handles on it that came on those Mojos. So the second that I actually picked one of these up, before we even talked to Ryan, I just found somebody in a St. Croix shirt and I said, thank you. Thank you for listening, right? This does not go unnoticed. I know some people like to rag on companies. I'm not a big fan on ragging on somebody just to rag on them. I do it if I think there's an actual negative or something that might be able to be addressed or fixed down the road, or to provide you guys some context on why I don't like a certain product or why I would choose not to buy something. But in the very, very rare case where a company actually listens, they should get praise for that. So as the young hip kids are saying now today, I hope I use this right, W. St. Croix. Okay, so this rod comes in 22 models. You've got 11 casting rods, 11 spinning rods. It's got that SC7 carbon fiber. They're calling this handle the next-gen Trigon handles, made with super grade machine cork. It's also got that sort of quirky rear trigger on the butt of the rod for casting. I'm sure that just takes some getting used to. It's not really a big deal, to be honest. Carbon fiber, Dynamix, reel seat. You've got a 15-year warranty on this, and it's made right in the USA in Wisconsin. Now, as with any product, this product has its pain points, and the main pain point of this is going to be the price, because they are retailing this rod for $610 to $645, depending on the model. A very, very high-end rod from St. Croix, but important to us because the handles have been changed due to angler feedback, and I would bet, like with any technology, you're going to see that sort of trickle down to other rods down the road, so that new handle might have future implications on cheaper rods in their lineup. Okay, so that's the main thing I wanted to hit from St. Croix. It seemed like they put a ton of time and money into the fly fishing side this year, so for you fly folks, I would pay attention to St. Croix in the coming year, but a nice story of a company that's listening and making adjustments, and I was one of the biggest Trigon handle haters back in the day, and this new version is much, much better. Okay, let's keep this train rolling, and let's walk over to Lew's. And Lew's has a few reels coming out this year that we should talk about, so to kick us off, we went around and found our friend Tony Merrill from Lose to break down these new reels for us.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, we are over here at Lose ICAST 2025. We're here with our buddy Tony. Tony, can you walk us through? We got a couple new reels here, some different technologies as you go up in price a little bit. Can you walk us through these 3 reels in front of us?
Absolutely, happy to. There's a lot of cool stuff we got going on at ICAST this year, and a couple things that we're really, really excited about, and we think it's really going to fit consumers this year with everything that's going on. We got some price points that are going to be really budget friendly, and we're also rolling some of our newer technologies on the braking system side of things into more reels. So let's kind of start at the bottom and work our way up from a price point perspective. So a new family that you're going to be hearing a lot about from Lose is Excel. Now, Excel meaning accelerate, speed. We're accelerating the quality at the kind of the opening price point part of the price ladder, we call it, in the catalog. And the Excel reel, the silver one you see right here, this reel is going to be your most budget-friendly reel offered by Lose. From a spec standpoint, it's all graphite frame and side plates, has 15 pounds of max drag. From a line capacity standpoint, 110 yards of 12-pound fluorocarbon. And, it's going to hold up really, really well. It's a 5-bearing system. And this reel casts very, very nicely for, what you would call kind of a budget-friendly reel. And it's going to hold up really well over time. It's got really strong brass gears in there, and they're going to be very durable, and they're going to hold up under a lot of abuse. So this reel is something that you want to take a look at. It's offered in a combo as well. So this bright silver one you see here right here, this is the Excel. So building off of that, one thing you've heard us talk a lot about is our Paramag braking systems. So last year we came out with a couple reels that had Paramag RX and Paramag ITB. The Excel RX, so sticking with the Excel family, but the Excel RX reel that I have in my hand, this basically takes that Excel platform and it has a Paramag RX braking system. So this is also going to be a very affordable reel that has a more effective and more premium braking system fit into it. So, this is, it's going to be priced just a little bit higher than the Excel due to that braking system, but it's going to be a reel that somebody can put in their hand, and you're going to have a very good experience with a baitcast reel, because especially if someone is, maybe still learning or still trying to get used to it, having a quality reel and a quality braking system is really going to make that experience that much better, and it's going to help you help you grow your baitcast repertoire. So moving our way up, from a braking system standpoint, that's not the only thing in a reel that makes it important, right? So there's a lot of other things that you can do too. Our Speed Spool RX also has the Paramag RX braking system in it, but this is part of our Speed Spool family, which means it is an aluminum frame. So this is a little bit larger size reel than the Excel reels. This holds 120 yards of 12-pound fluorocarbon, but like I said, it's aluminum frame, which means it's not going to flex. It's not going to torque at all when you put a lot of pressure on it. So it's going to be built a lot more for those more heavy-duty applications and a little bit more abuse. But it's still a very lightweight reel for what it is. 20 pounds of max drag, so a little bit more power from a drag perspective, and it's an 8-bearing system, and it has our knot slot on the spool here for a seamless connection from line to spool. So those are 3 baitcast reels that are new this year: the Excel RX, and the Speed Spool RX. A lot of really great features in these, and we're really excited to offer these new technologies in more of our reels this year.
As you go down here, just for regular, weekend warriors that are out there looking for a reel, who is kind of your target of each of these? Is this more like, your Excel, the regular version, is more like someone that is sort of just getting into fishing and is really, really budget conscious, and then as you're ready to take the step up? Or would you recommend some of those younger anglers and people that might be a little bit more prone to backlashes actually look above the regular Excel at a different braking system?
Yeah, if I was to say, and I'm just going to give you my honest opinion right here, I would go straight to the Excel RX, because you're spending just a little bit more, but you're going to get a braking system that you find in reels that are dang near $200. But this reel is half the price. So you're going to get a lot of bang for your buck with that extra braking system in there. But if you want to go with an option that's going to be the most price conscious, which many people are nowadays with everything that's going on, the Excel is going to be the most budget friendly option, and it's still going to give you a great experience, but having the Paramag RX braking system is taking that next step.
What about availability on these? Are these all available currently? Are some of these being scaled out as we speak? When can folks pick these up?
That's a great question. So currently today, the Speed Spool RX is in our warehouse, in stock and available. Now, not all dealers have them in their stores yet. Some do, some don't. Some of them are going to be taking them later this year. But you can go to our website and check them out, and you can see what's available there. But we do have it in stock today. The Excel reels and combos, those are going to be available at several retailers some point in mid-August, so here just within the next few weeks. Again, maybe not available everywhere right away, but we're having a lot of interest in this reel, so it's going to be available in some places to start with, and then even more as we get later in the year. The Excel RX, our first availability on that is we're going to be shipping to retailers starting in November, so that'll be just a little bit later. But we do have, like I said, the Speedspool RX is available today. Excel is coming here within the next month, and then Excel RX later on into the fall, closer to Thanksgiving time.
Okay, so 3 new casting reels in the Lew's family. You've got the Excel, which Tony said is the most budget-friendly reel that Lew's offers, and it comes in at $79. A pretty good feeling reel in that price point that is basically dead at this point. You're looking at like $80 and under. You almost cannot find a reel from one of these big companies that actually has, like a name brand behind it for $80 in the casting market. It's just super hard to find. So kudos to Lew's for realizing, hey, the weekend warriors, the budget conscious people, they deserve new products too, similar to Daiwa that came out with that Air. But seeing an actual new reel under $80 from one of the legacy brands was not on my bingo sheet this week, but I'm glad that it showed up, and it's got respectable specs. You got 15 pounds of drag. That's plenty. Of course, you're going to have graphite side plates at this point. Every reel is in this price point. Nothing surprising there. You get 5 bearings, which is serviceable, and it's just an extremely affordable reel. And then you take a step up from that Excel and you get the Excel RX. And this is simply the Excel reel that we just talked about a second ago with a new braking system in it. That's the only difference. Well, that, and it's a darker gray. It has a different color so you can tell them apart. But that's really the only 2 differences. Now, this reel has the Paramag RX braking system in it. And this is one of 2 newer braking systems from Lew's over the past couple years. But they have the Paramag RX and the Paramag ITB braking system. That ITB braking system is a little bit more expensive. That's the braking system you heard about in the Lew's Custom Pro last year. So what's the difference, though? You have the Paramag ITB and the Paramag RX. We asked Tony that exact question. Here was his answer.
Absolutely. That's a great question, and happy to talk through it. It's something, like you said, we're rolling Paramag systems into more and more reels, and it's important to know that there's 2 different systems, Paramag RX and Paramag ITB. Now, reels like the Excel RX and the Speedspool RX that we just launched this year, you know that they have the Paramag RX system because we put it into the name, aka Excel RX, Speedspool RX. So the big thing that you want to take note of is both these systems use the same side plate, okay? So basically you've got a side plate that has magnets in that round black piece in there, evenly distributed. And when you crank up the braking power in the dial on the side plate, those magnets come out further and they impact the inner surface of the spool, okay? So that's what you're going to have in both situations here. The difference is on the Paramag RX system, you have consistent braking throughout the cast. So you're going to apply the same amount of brakes from the very beginning to the very end of the cast. There's no change. Paramag ITB, the difference is you're going to have variability of braking throughout the cast, and that happens by this collar right here, okay? So it's a spring-loaded, we call it the turbo disc. When you launch that bait out there, that collar shoots out around those magnets in the side plate. When that spool starts to slow down towards the back half of the cast, that turbo disc comes back in, lets off those brakes, lets off those magnets, and you're going to get a little bit more extra distance. So the ITB gives you a little bit more distance. That's going to have a little bit more effect when you're fishing in wind or fishing lightweight baits that are, just in general hard to cast, or maybe they don't have a weight transfer system and they're just, they don't cast in the wind very well. The ITB is going to give you a little bit more control to give you good castability on those hard to cast type baits. So both very effective braking systems. Paramag RX gives a perfect spool balance, just like ITB does. Those magnets are evenly distributed and not just affecting one part of the spool, but evenly around the spool, which is very important. But that's why you see a Paramag ITB being in, more expensive reels, with the Custom Pro being $100 more than the Custom. That braking system is a little bit more advanced. It's going to give you a little bit easier casting situation when it comes to those hard to cast baits.
So there you go. Question answered. The ITB braking system is just a little bit more robust because you have the added benefit of that spool collar sort of popping out, causing a little bit of a centrifugal force there. So you have two pieces working together on those brakes versus one in the RX. It's hard to explain without seeing, but the ITB just has one more moving piece to help even more slow that spool down when you need it to. But you get the RX braking system in this Excel RX, but you're also going to have to pay for it because the price goes from $79 in the regular Excel to $109 in the Excel RX. If you wanted to add that RX braking system, you're looking at about a $30 increase. And then you're going to get the Speed Spool RX. That is the next step up. And that is the tried and true Lew's Speed Spool aluminum frame, 20 pounds of max drag, 8 bearings, a bigger spool, that Speed Spool reel that everybody knows and loves, now with an RX braking system in it. So an upgraded braking system from the standard Lew's braking system. You're going to get that for $179. So those are your 3 new reels. You have a $79 Excel, you have a $109 Excel RX, and then you have the $179 Speed Spool RX. Now, the other thing that came out that Lew's had up on display was the KVD Elite spinning and casting reels. And you might be saying, hey man, why are you not talking about the KVD Elites? Why are you skipping right past those? Well, because that KVD Elite casting reel is just a red version of the Speed Spool RX. The only difference, the only one, is that Speed Spool RX has 8 bearings, the KVD Elite has 7. That's it. They're the same frame, the same braking system, the same drag, the same everything except one tiny bearing. That, and you're going to get a different color because the KVD Elite is red with the KVD logo on the side. And to be honest, that one bearing makes basically no difference. So it really comes down to, do you want a red reel or do you want a dark gray reel? That's it. They're both $179, same tech, same everything. Do you want a red reel with the KVD logo on it, or do you want a classic sort of gray reel with the Speed Spool RX on it? Both of them have that RX braking system. There's really no difference. As soon as I picked it up and I looked at that KVD Elite, I looked kind of cross-eyed for a second, then I looked back at the Speed Spool RX and I said, wait a second. I put them side by side. I tried to measure everything. I was like, these are the same exact reel. I even went and asked somebody off camera. I said, hey, what's the difference between the KVD Elite and the Speed Spool RX? And they told me, basically, you're getting one more or less bearing depending on which one you buy. Same price, same everything. So you will hear that here. I'm not sure you're going to hear that many other places, but that's the fun part about Tackle Talk. We can just kind of call it how we see it. And the way I see it, these are the exact same reel, same price, same tech, same everything, basically just different colors. And do you like KVD or do you want a regular looking reel? So there are the reels from Lew's. Overall, I give Lew's a pretty big thumbs up this year. Anyone bringing options and tech down to the 100-ish and under price point, I'm here for it. And they're cleaning up their product line, just like Shimano. They're making things easier to fall into these kind of clear families of reels. You know, Excel RX, Speed Spool RX. They're making things really simple. I like that. I'm a big fan. Now, on the rod side from Lew's, there wasn't really a whole lot I was excited about this year, but for the reels, I'm going to give it a thumbs up. Okay, we got to keep moving along here and chugging along. We have a ton to get to still. I mean, this is going to be a very long episode. Sorry, guys. But let's go to a couple dark horses here in the rod and reel game. And I'm actually going to start here with Spro. So we're going to walk over to the Spro booth and we're going to take a second to talk to Kevin Brightwell of KGB Swim Baits, who collaborates really heavily with Spro on a bunch of projects, a couple of which we'll hear about here in a little bit on the bait side of things. That's what most of you know him for. But we're actually going to talk to him about a reel that Spro has coming out, and something I did not expect out of Spro, but a solid new reel offering. And so with that, let's head over and chat with Kevin Brightwell.
I'm really excited about this. This is not just when I'm just going to tell you, when we sat down at the meeting table and designed this reel, we pretty much had free run on the design. We asked, hey, like, what are our limitations? And they said none. So when we sat down on this, one of my things was drag. I'm getting tired of even some of the heaviest reels out there on the hook set on big bass or striper, it's slipping. So they said, how much drag do you want? And I said, all of it. They delivered. We got 30 pounds of drag in a 300 size reel. And a little backstory on this, it was me and Dean Rojas partnered up to sit down and build these reels. Dean got the 200 size, I got the 300 size. It is a beefy reel. So 30 pounds of drag, we got a carbon disc drag system on there, a magnetic braking system. Everything's audible on this. Comes stock with the 110 mil handle, so that's already, you don't have to go and upgrade to that. This is already pretty much a stock upgrade, so to say. Got 10+1 bearings, super heavy duty spool shaft in there, magnesium frame. This thing, I mean, when they said free run and build it, we did, and they delivered. They didn't gate us on any of it. So pretty much me and Dean, two of the power fishermen in Spro's group, got together to build the beefiest reel that we possibly could, and we got free run, and we delivered on it. Availability is going to be, I think, in October, and price is going to be, they're shooting for that $350, I think it's $359. So we did not go entry level. That was not our goal. If we're going to do something, we're going all out, and that's what we did. So it's a very, very nice reel, super smooth. I've been beating on them for over a year now, and I've never oiled my samples intentionally because I'm trying to destroy them, and I can't destroy them. Everything's audible, too. That's another little feature. A lot of companies are doing the audible drag, so it has a nice little subtle click. It's an audible feedback. You know if your drag's slipping or if your spool is slipping. So.
Okay, so a big bait reel designed by a big bait guy in Kevin Brightwell and a big bass guy in Dean Rojas, a guy that once weighed in 45 pounds of bass in 5 fish. Both of those guys put together are a great team to design a beefy reel, and it seems like they did just that. So I think the easiest way to do this is to actually compare this reel to probably the most popular 300 size, big bait and casting reel out there, and that's the Shimano Tranx. So I want to compare apples to apples here a little bit on the key features of both of those reels. So first, you heard there is drag. They packed 30 pounds of drag into this new Spro reel. This reel should not be slipping on you, even with the biggest baits and the biggest fish. It's definitely making sure of that. That thing should be locked down. If you want it to lock down, you should have no problems. I've had more issues with like my Shimano Corrado M that I've been using lately for a lot of my glide baits and stuff. I've had more issues with that reel slipping on hook sets and stuff than I have with any other reel that I've ever used. And I think it's just because I'm throwing big baits and big gear on it, and you're kind of overworking that reel. You almost need a reel that's made for that kind of stuff if you're going to be doing it a lot. This looks like a reel that they have engineered to do just that. So 30 pounds of drag is insane. Compare that 30 pounds that's on the Spro reel to the Shimano Tranx, sort of the gold standard of swim bait reels. That reel is going to have 18 to 22 pounds of drag on it. So with this Spro, you're getting 8 to 12 more pounds of drag. You're also getting that 110 millimeter handle stock on the Spro, which basically means you're getting that larger handle for more torque and more power. And when you look at something like a Tranx, that comes stock in the 300 size, I think, with a 102 millimeter handle. So that's something that a lot of people will then upgrade to a 110. You don't have to do that with the Spro. That's saving you money right off the bat. You also get a clicking drag, clicking tension knobs. Both of those are really nice touches, just that audible kind of feedback for you. So you know when your drag is being pulled, you know when you're adjusting even the slightest little bit of your tension knob. I'm a big fan of that type of stuff. And then the retail on this new Spro reel is $359. Now with that, you're going to look at the Tranx and you're going to say, but Andrew, a Tranx 300 is $300. But if you have that $300 Tranx and then you upgrade to something like a Gomexis handle, that's the 110 size, I think those are normally $59. That puts a Tranx with an upgraded 110 handle at $359 as well. So the same price as the Spro reel that they've developed. So you're in the same ballpark here no matter what. So I'd be curious to play with this one a little bit. I'm not a big fan of Spro reels in general. I've just been kind of underwhelmed with what they've put out on the reel market the past few years after getting into it, but this one catches my eye, and I'll be curious to see what the feedback is from those diehard swim bait folks. But on the specs and on the show floor alone, it felt awesome. Super buttery smooth. You have overbuilt specs in this thing, which you like to see on the big bait side. I think this is a really cool thing to probably keep your eye on if you are one of those people that's in the market for a big bait reel. This might be a dark horse. I know a lot of people go to Daiwa, a lot of people go to Shimano. You see a lot of those people. You might want to start looking at Spro if this turns out to be half as cool as it felt on the show floor. Okay, that is Spro on the reel side. Now let's make our way over to another wild card in the rod and the reel game, and that's going to be the infamous Cast King. And specifically for one reel in particular that we heard about on this show a few weeks ago, before it was even released on the internet, we told you about it because we got a hold of a very early press release for the Cast King MGTI, and that is that new reel from Cast King with the titanium spool and shaft. So I had to see him for myself, and I had to find someone who could better explain it to me and answer all of our questions that we had for them, and we found him. His name is AJ over at Cast King, and he's going to walk us through this brand new MGTI.
This reel that we're going to talk about, the MGTI, it is an industry first, like you said, and it is using some elements, to touch on all those comments, that is just amazing. So what we have is we have two elements from the periodic table: magnesium, that's where the MG comes from, and then TI for titanium. So with those two elements right there, that allows us to create a reel that's super lightweight, coming in at 5 ounces, that is going to cover every spectrum of bass fishing you could possibly want to do, as well as crossbreed into other types of fishing. And it all stemmed from bait finesse, but doesn't stop there. It goes all the way to power fishing. So now you have a reel utilizing those elements that we talked about, from the magnesium to give you that strength but lightweight durability in a frame, then touching into the titanium elements that gives you the lightweight ability to get that starting inertia like you see in a bait finesse reel, and those shallow, drilled out, hollowed out spools that are super lightweight, super fragile. There's a lot of potential there to damage those spools if you use the wrong lines. Some of the other brands out there, if you read their fine print, talk about you can't use these type of monos or these type of lines. You can actually degrade the spool and ruin it. If you use too heavy of lines and get too aggressive, then you start trying to use a bait finesse reel to catch donkeys and yank them out of areas over logs and into heavy cover that you shouldn't be. And that's what we found people using like our Kestrel Elite for, and that's where this reel came from, is they were taking a BFS reel and using it for traditional bass fishing, and it wasn't designed for that. So it's like taking that tool out of Dad's toolbox that's not a hammer and using it as a hammer, and Dad's like, hey, that you're eventually going to break that. And that's kind of where we looked at, but it gave us ideas of going, and then they kept asking, well, we like this and we need it for this. Can you do this and can we do that? And we're like, well, it's not really made for that, but we didn't want to ignore them, and it gave us that idea of, okay, let's give the people what they want. If they want it, let's build it. If you build it, they will come, right? So we came out with the MG12, which was a deeper spool, a couple different design brakes, a little bit bigger handle, so the bass guys and the people in the saltwater using it for redfish, they were doing amazing things with it. And of course they asked for more, and they asked for more, which created more ideas, which now we've come full circle to the MGTI. And that reel is going to allow you to be able to throw pretty close down to about a 16th ounce of a lure, or if you want to go full spectrum to the opposite side. And normally you move that window. You either move it to finesse, you move it to traditional fishing, or you move it all the way to power fishing. With the MGTI, we don't move the windows around. First time in the entire industry, we've expanded the window. So now you can do bait finesse, all other techniques in between, all the way up to power fishing. So you can throw it down to about almost a 16th of an ounce lure, or you can put an 1.5 ounce tungsten weight on there and go punching with the best of them in a reel that's only 5 ounces. It's got that large handle that everybody's been begging for. It's got the large TPE grips. Unfortunately, this is an audio cast here, so you can't see what we're talking about, but it has a very large star drag that is dramatically larger than other star drags you'll see on a lot of bait casters. And hearing that in audio, it may take you go, okay, well, I don't want that. That's going to be cumbersome. That's going to get in the way. It's a curved large star drag, so that curvature actually almost wraps around the reel, and it puts that star drag right where you want it without being cumbersome. And where I like that is you can actually use that if you're doing the drag deal with one hand, and then when you're picking up that slack, you're like one finger flicking it to pull it, to spin that handle and retrieve that line. But also, if you get into that oh my god moment, you've got a giant fish on board, it comes up, maybe it sees the kayak or it sees the boat or it sees you at the bank, you've only got it with one hook and you got too much drag and you're like, oh god. Now either hand quickly will not be fumbling, fighting to find that drag. You're going to find it either way quickly and be able to adjust it to help keep that fish. Other key features: low friction tapered line guide. We've got the Halo 2 braking system on it. So all the different features that you want with precision bearings. It's actually a 9-2+1 bearing. So great gear ratio, great bearing count, very good precision stainless steel bearings. This thing is the total package, and you use that a lot in a lot of, like we said earlier, there's a lot of terms that get thrown around and overused. There's no overuse in these terms. This is truly the great explanation for those terms. It's a game changer. Nobody else in the industry has a reel that can bait finesse and power fish and everything else in between. And it's got that great robust design while being super lightweight. It's not techie, but it is innovative and it is engineered for some amazing fishing that you're going to love. So if you want to go from one side to the other, you've got a reel that'll do everything in between. It's the Swiss Army knife of reels in a way.
So were there any issues with the manufacturing process of titanium? What I know of titanium is like, a little bit of brittleness, obviously, when you're trying to machine that, and I'm sure that creates some issues in the production side of things. How did you guys attack that, or did you have any hiccups along the way to try and work with an element or a material that you don't typically work with?
It's always going to be a struggle. Anytime, like carbon brings its own struggles, magnesium brings its own struggles. Like, of course, magnesium and salt don't get along, but we figured out ways to coat that magnesium to be saltwater friendly. There's a lot of different elements, and of course now touching on the titanium, of course, you get into that brittleness, like you said. Patience, learning, and getting the right tooling and the right engineering basically will alleviate, and patience and intelligence just work through it. Nothing's impossible. We say it is, but human ingenuity is amazing, and the brilliance behind these engineers of trial and error and doing the right homework, and we got it figured out, obviously, and that's the great thing about challenges. It makes us better. So we took those challenges head on and excelled from it and made us a better company, which we are striving to make better products for the industry. And we've definitely done that with the MGTI.
So there you go. Now, I know that everybody has their opinion on Cast King, but to me, it seems like anyway, they're working with a lot more people now. They understand that digital landscape and the importance of the influencer type folks, really online people that have people that watch them versus the pros. So I have to give them credit for that. Like it or not, your ROI on sponsorship marketing is probably way better if you find the right online folks with the right following than it would be if you spent that money to put your logo on a pro's shirt and be one of 200 logos on it. So more companies are starting to realize that day by day, and Cast King seems to have jumped full into that world. So you're seeing more Cast King online, and you're seeing a lot more of those people that you might have watched for years and years, whether it's YouTube or social media or whatever. Now those people are like sponsored or partnered with Cast King, and they're telling you all about Cast King products all the time. But there's a lot of people who still have some scar tissue when it comes to Cast King because of what Cast King used to be. Their product catalog was a whole lot of like parts assembled cheap reels that had no rhyme or reason to them, and why there were 17 different reels that all looked like they were probably made by different companies, and they would try and get you to buy them with Facebook ads or Amazon ads or whatever, and they were super cheap and they were junk. But now, over the last few years, Cast King has really done some good work in revamping that brand by bringing manufacturing into their own factory in China, which almost nobody does, versus using like a Doyo, which almost every other reel company that's not a Shimano or Daiwa or someone like that, they almost all use the Doyo factories. They've also really implemented some cool quality control processes I got to see a little bit of. They're using photo scanning and AI and all that type of stuff. They've also pumped quite a bit of money into the brand and marketing, and now you're starting to see some of these actual Cast King developed and manufactured reels starting to hit the market. Things that they've made and manufactured themselves and not just bought different parts and assembled these sort of Frankenstein reels like a lot of other people do. And I think that's the best way you can explain it. Over the past few years, a lot of Cast King's products and reels in particular have just kind of looked mismatched. Nothing made sense. There was no cohesiveness. And now the last few reels that they've come out with, they have a look. They have an identity that they didn't have before. And that's a huge step in the right direction, in my opinion, for someone like Cast King. So I'm a huge proponent in giving credit where credit is due. I think Cast King deserves a lot of credit on that side of things. Now, are they on par with Shimano or Daiwa or those people of the world? No, they're not. But they seem to start to be overtaking some of those smaller to maybe even middle brands. Like I would probably buy a Cast King reel now before I would buy a Dobbins reel, before I would buy a 7 reel from St. Croix or someone like that, right? They're starting to creep up in the rankings a little bit. And that's something that I probably wouldn't have said a few years ago. I would have put Cast King almost at the very bottom, but they're just not there anymore. They're on the right sort of trajectory, which is cool. But enough about Cast King in general. Let's hit this reel really fast. So the moral of the story here is that they tried to build a reel that could do both finesse and power. And those two things typically don't go together. If it's finessey, that means it's a lighter spool, it's less durable, the drag is slipping. But if it's for more power, then you've got a little heavier frame, a little heavier spool, which doesn't play nice with really light lures. You usually have more drag on those reels. They're built more like tanks. Those two worlds sort of live separately in good high-end reels. But KastKing is at least trying to give you both here. Now, I have no doubt that this reel can handle your medium to heavy-ish baits, but where I get skeptical is on the extremes. I have a hard time believing that this reel can handle really well a 1.5 ounce glide bait and then can also cast a 1/16 ounce lure with ease. Those are two very different spools usually, but I also don't have any working knowledge of how titanium works and how that's different from what we're used to seeing in spools. So I guess time will tell on this one. I want to believe it. I want to say, cool, a company on the up and up that's doing something no one else is doing and pushing the envelope on materials. I want to say that really bad, but I just don't know. Because there's also the other side of this, which could be that this is just, kind of a little gimmicky, and maybe there's a reason why none of the big boys have ever used titanium in their spools. I just don't know enough. And I did some sort of fact checking, at least the most I could. I weighed on a digital scale that titanium spool to see if it's close to what they said. I think they list it at 6.9 grams. When I weighed it on the digital scale, spool and shaft, it weighed 7.3 grams. So very, very close. I'm guessing that listed weight of 6.9 just includes the spool and not the shaft, which is probably about right, but 7.3 grams is crazy light. Meanwhile, I measured the spool off of one of their other reels, like the Mega Jaws, and that weighed 12.8 grams on the same scale, so almost twice as much. So you do confirmed have a lot of weight reduction in this spool. That is not arguable. I saw it with my own eyes on a scale. I tested it myself. That is something I'm not going to argue. That spool is insanely light. Now it's just a matter of performance. And on that side, like I said, time will tell. Okay, other than that, really quickly here, I just want to give a status update on some other rod and reel brands that I kind of stopped by. I didn't think we needed to take a ton of time to discuss them today here. So one would be like 13 Fishing. They had a few new rods. One that caught my eye was the Jinx. It's very light, but it also felt cheap in my hands, and rightfully so. It's a $79 rod, so they are giving you a budget option as well. They had split grip and full cork handles. The spinning rods had a fairly comfortable reel seat on them. If durability is there, and that's my one kind of reservation, and I still have some PTSD with a lot of cheap 13 rods back in the day. If durability is there and they don't break on the 10th hook set like a lot of my old 13s did, then these could be a pretty solid rod from 13 at $79. So 13, probably something to watch in the future. Again, I don't think we need to spend a ton of time on it. A $79 rod option from 13, brand new, seems like something at least worth keeping an eye on. They also had some new Oath models. They had some new Myth models. It seems to be more like line extensions and new models than anything. Nothing that really blew me away from 13. Again, not much to report on like the 7 reels, which are under the St. Croix brand. Still not really a player in my mind yet. There are much better options at much cheaper price points out there. You also had Okuma, you had Denali, Dobbins, nothing earth-shattering from any of those people. Now, I did get to go feel the new Element Z2s from Cashin, and those will be a rod that I really want to play with this year. For $129, you get a cork handle, American-made, independent company. I want to fish those and dive really deep into those, but just picking one up at this show was enough to confirm that those are going to be on my short list of rods to buy before the end of this year is up. And that sort of wraps us up on the big brand rod and reel side. And now I want to go around that same show floor and I want to hit some of the bigger bait brands to see what they're up to and what catches our eye. So let's start with one of the biggest, Rapala. Now, Rapala had quite a few new products this year that they were dropping at ICAST, but none more talked about than, for a second year in a row, a new topwater bait. And you guys know me, I don't hide the ball here. The way to my heart is a cool new topwater. Enough minnows, enough dice, give me topwater. And Rapala did that for the second year in a row, this time with the new claptail prop bait. And to tell us all about it, I sat down with a gentleman that we know very well here on Tackle Talk. He was the lead on the design of this project, so much so that his name is on the outside of the package. Let's sit down and talk about the claptail with our friend Jacob Wheeler.
All right, everybody, we are here with Jacob Wheeler. Jacob, you have a bait in front of us that has caused quite a stir the past couple days. We have the claptail, so it's been very well received, it seems like, as we're walking around here. We have a couple in front of us. Can you walk us through the nuances of this bait? Because I have to assume it was probably hard to get right, because there's problems just with plopper-style baits in general with rolling, and after 20, 30 fish, the internal wires start to bend and it never rolls right again. So how did you guys kind of go about trying to make sure that this thing was the best it could be?
So, first off, starting out, it was a concept that I wanted, I'm just not going to make another. Plopping style baits, you think, the Whopper Plopper was the original in the bass world. And then you look at, the musky world. They've had plopping style baits since, the 30s, I think, or in 1908, I think was I believe it was, maybe the 50s. But choppers and stuff like that. So, to me, I my mindset, a lot of times I cannot just do another Me Too. That's not happening. They're oh, well, hey, look, I'm I want to figure out a way to show the bass something different, because it does, even now with forward facing and seeing how when you show this fish something different, you realize how much of an impact that makes on generating bites. We saw that with an Alabama rig going from okay, it was freaking unbelievable. Now the bass don't bite it like they used to. Yep. So that's why it's so important to continue to give different sounds, different actions, different things going on. And so with this bait, I had this concept. I wanted to figure out a way to make it clack and make it have a unique sound and piecing something together. And so we started off, and it was 7 or 8 different prototypes, and I literally was about to give up. I'm dude, there's no way I can make this bait work without the bait rolling, without the bait giving I couldn't even get the right sound. I'm what am I missing? And I'm sitting there in the garage, and what I was looking at, believe it or not, I was looking at the old Budweiser can, that weight bait that clicks. Yeah. And I saw that blade, and I said, I think I haven't met. Well, it wasn't even that, because it has a hook hanger, and then it does hit metal to metal. That basically that blade back there hits that hook hanger, or that basically blade hanger. Yeah. So it comes back and hits it and clanks around. And I started thinking, because you needed something to pivot, but not make it, because it would otherwise would roll. So I'm sitting here, and I'm I think this is gonna work. So I get into this scenario, I start making something up, and I just basically halfway put it together in my pool, and it turns into this concept. But then now you have the real work to start, because now you have the sound of what you want, at least that ting sound, that unique sound. But then this metal-to-metal contact, then you got to figure out what blade. So I went through every blade that I could buy anywhere. So then I went through every blade, saying what gives me the most unique sound. And I came up with this blade that felt because you could do a Colorado, but it didn't have that. It was not as consistent and not as unique. I had a very high-pitched sound in this more Indiana kind of style blade.
Like a Mepps blade.
It is exactly what it is, almost a Blue Fox blade. And so this was the best blade in that scenario. So I get to that point. Now I'm what are my worst things that I hate in plopping style baits? A bait rolling, right? Because when the bait rolls, it ultimately comes to a point where you just miss a lot of fish. You also have a lot of line twists. This bait you can't reel as fast as some of the traditional plopping style baits, because you have so much things going on. But it's gonna go so say if you give it, I'm just gonna say it, a fast you can reel say a Whopper Plopper is a 10. Yeah. You can reel this bait at 8. And it's going to be because so much is going on, it doesn't, it's the perfect, that's the perfect speed. And so then it came down to stabilization. So then that came down to weight. So the OG Whopper Ploppers actually had a lot more weight in them. They were super heavy back in the day. Now I'm talking about the original first one. They would actually sink. So then I used to catch them all the time, and I'm but then they went lighter because they had too many people calling them up and saying they're sinking, all this stuff. Well, that was a better sound, deeper sound than any of the other ones. So then I'm I need to make this bait as heavy as I possibly can without it sinking. And then basically now you have this scenario, rotating a hook hanger, of course, so in the front, so that way that swivel allows for this fish not to have the leverage. And then that bottom fin right there is a stabilization fin. Right there's, and I was back and forth, because I'm is that going to hurt my hookup ratio? Number one. Number two, does it actually? Does it actually do anything? So what I found out is not what it does in flat, calm water, but when you have wind, it helps stabilize it more. It's something about the wind, and it helps stabilize it more. So that's the whole concept. That's how it got to the point of where it was. And there's a lot of, even to the point of there's things in this bait. If it was, I'm talking a half a centimeter off, like maybe a centimeter, like it's a couple millimeters off, it's like literally, it's not going to work.
Last question here. So as far as the sound that you were going for, obviously, you have the inspiration of the old Budweiser stuff. Is that where this sort of thin, tinny sort of sound, where did that inspiration come from?
Actually, Dan Quinn at Rapala, there's a bait in the muskie world that's similar to that. Like in the muskie world that has just like a hard body lure with a blade on the back too.
Like a flap tail or something.
It's called a flap tail. That's it, flap tail.
Yeah.
Yes.
2 or 3 of them sometimes.
So that was like when I was sitting here thinking through, I'm like, like Dan had mentioned that, but I don't even own one. So like that was sort of like, that was a big deal in the muskie world, but this is sort of a different world of like, all right, how can I sort of, I don't know, that you can't reel that fast enough. It's sort of slow. It's not going to work in the bass world, like in that aspect. So like, how can I make something that's unique, that's going to work, but take some of that sound, because I love that sound. That was the mindset. Like, I mean, that's, that, there's a lot of inspiration that came from there. And then of course that little Bud Light can or whatever it is. I mean, it's cool. So that's when you get to this point now, and I'm like, what the heck? But yeah.
Okay, big question. When will folks be able to buy it?
So that's, I mean, it's all dependent on how fast we get them in, obviously. Of course, I think it'll probably more so like first week of November. There's probably a time frame, maybe October. You're going to see some popping up in October, some fall topwater season. You might not be able to get it for all my friends up north, but in the fall, you're going to get some, down south, you're going to get some really cool opportunities in that November, that time frame. I mean, it's still buying it pretty good throughout the fall. So I think that'll be the prime time, but it's cool to see this thing come through.
So there you go. In very simple terms, if you haven't seen one, picture like a Whopper Plopper style bait, make the prop tail metal instead of plastic, and then add like an Indiana Mepps style blade attached to almost where the back dorsal fin would be, attached by a split ring back there. So every time that metal blade makes a rotation, it makes contact with that blade, and it creates this sound that I think we say in the interview is almost like a tingy, sort of thinner chime sound to it. And with the chop and the disturbance on the water, the videos and the audio that I was showed sound pretty darn good. So you're going to get that sort of feel, like we mentioned when we were talking and we sat down to chat, kind of like the musky flap tail, which is a big topwater in the musky world. And if you've ever seen one, I think they're the Chaos Tackle, like Big Mama Psycho flap tails. We have a couple of them here that we'll use every once in a while. It's this very distinct ringing chime to it. So like with my eyes closed, if you played, 15 different baits to me, I could tell you exactly which one is that flap tail. It's a very distinct sound. That sounds like kind of what they were going for with this clap tail from Rapala. So that's 2 cool topwaters 2 years in a row from Jacob and Rapala. Last year we had the Jowler, and this year we get the clap tail. Now, my only gripe with these, and this goes for both of these, that I have with the topwaters they've come out, is that they're at a very premium price. And it hurts a little bit for a brand new bait that you've never used before. The Rapala Jowlers now have an MSRP, I think, of $21.79. I think they just went up. And this new claptail is slated to release at $18.99. Now, for reference, a Whopper Plopper is $12.99. So you're paying an extra $6 premium here for that blade and for different hardware and a little different sound to it. But I've said this before. One, I'm more likely to pay more money for a topwater than I will for other things because I lose them less often. As long as you take care of them, a topwater can last you darn near forever as long as you don't hang it up in a tree or something. You're not really getting snagged below the water, so there's less worry about losing those topwaters. The other thing is that new products are not cheap to create. So I get that too. Molds, CAD designs, drawings, testings, prototypes, anything new is going to cost you more money to make. And then oftentimes that gets passed along to the consumer because they have to recoup that investment of developing that new product. I get that too. Most of the time, brand new cool things that come to market are not going to be the cheapest. And we're going to talk about that in a little bit on a much larger scale. So keep that in mind. But this is the price that you pay for new baits. But that doesn't mean that I can't complain about it a little bit. But this will definitely be a bait that I buy. I just hope that they release it on schedule, because that would get us right into like the tail end of Ohio topwater time. So I'd love to try this out before winter hits. But other than that, Rapala released the new DT12. Not much to explain there. It's a new DT crankbait that hits a depth that we've not had before. We have DT10s, we have DT14s. Now we get the DT12 to fill in that crack. And ironically, I think when we look back 20 years from now, this will probably be the bait that I buy most of over my lifetime that came out of this ICAST. I love DTs, and there are definitely times where a 10 doesn't get down far enough that I need to, but also my 14 digs a little too hard and doesn't deflect how I want it to. So as silly as it sounds, I am very excited for the Rapala DT12. They also released some new Crush City baits. They have the new Ned Roll, which is like a half shell extension of the Ned Bait BLT, but it's got kind of a cool, flat, kind of cupped tail on it. So if you want something a little different to drag or throw on a drop shot, you've got that new Ned Roll. They had the Jerk. They had the size extensions of the Mooch Minnow and the Freeloader. But to me, the two that probably are going to make my shopping list this year from Rapala are the Claptail and the DT12. Okay, let's keep moving here. Next, follow along with me as we head over to the Z-Man booth, where we meet up with a gentleman that knows everything about all of the new baits they just released from Z-Man. Let's have a conversation with Brandon McKellar from Z-Man to walk us through the new product lines for 2025.
Brandon, can you walk us through? There's quite a few new baits from Z-Man this year. Let's start with the tube. Probably the one, if I'm being honest, I'm most excited about as a Midwest finesse guy to the bone. This screams everything around us. So can you walk us through this new llama tube?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me on. So our llama tubes, Seth Fighter, who is one of our bass pros, really wanted a 2-inch tube made from Elastec, not something that you commonly see necessarily in the marketplace as well, as far as size. But more importantly, he really wanted an awesome jig head to be able to fish on this tube. So the Llama Tube's jig head itself has a VMC red line hook in it, so a tournament grade quality hook. Doing this anywhere from a 1/16 ounce up to a 1/4 ounce. So all these jig heads are going to be available here soon. Brand new colors like Siren for us, and a bunch of other colors that Seth really wanted to bring into the mix for that Midwestern market. So we're jazzed up about this. It's going to be a great addition to the lineup.
So then as we move on, we go from one extreme to the other. Let's go to a harnessed line through swim bait in the Swag, which just won an award last night. Congratulations, by the way.
Thank you.
So can you walk us through, because this has a lot going on for it too, for just kind of a bait that people have seen some iterations of in the past, and everyone kind of has had some little quirks about it that people don't really love and would love to try and fix. You guys have addressed a couple of those with this.
Yeah, absolutely. So this whole process really started, that's about 3 years ago. We came out with the Mulletron LT, which is a line through wedge tail swim bait. Last year we had the Shadtron, which was our shad body, same harness idea. This year with the Swag, though, we wanted to take a completely different body profile that's become really popular, add a proprietary new tail. So the Swag tail is where the Swag LT name comes from. So we're doing it in 5 and 6 inches. The double Y style harness that we have in this has a top hook, so a 3/0 will be in the 4.5 and a 5/0 will be in the 6-inch. So that's for your top, fishing over vegetation, anything low-hanging obstacles, anything you don't want to get snagged on. Top hook's great for that. And then the bottom treble, which everyone gets excited about, we actually have a slide-in harness system here for the back. So instead of a magnet or a clip that you push into, this slides into the back and deploys back out of the rear. So it deploys super easy. It doesn't come out unnecessarily. It's just a really great secured system. And we put a custom clipped treble hook in it. So there's a little hole right here that the clipped treble would slide into, as well as a nail weight, any scent, anything you might want to add to the Swag. You have a little accessory port, as I've been calling it, on the tail there. But the coloration on it looks great. It's a photo printed paint like we've done with Mulletron and Swag or Shadtron and some other baits. But man, we're super excited about this. Best category for freshwater soft lure last night at the award ceremony. I can't say enough about this thing. Jose and Richard, who are our product development team, they do a fantastic job.
So the swim on this, because you have this wedge tail that's a little bit different.
Mm-hmm.
What's that swim going to be like compared to some other, harnessed swim baits that people see on the market?
So the swag, it has a little waggle, it has a little swagger to it. As you progress up in speed, so you go to higher gear ratio reels or you're reeling it a little faster, it gets a little wider and a little quicker. It's a fantastic design for a versatile range of speed windows. It works really well going really slow, but also you can't burn it out. It does really well up top, moving fast. So you're going to be able to fish it in a bunch of different scenarios just because of the versatility of that tail and its swimming action.
Is there any swimming difference between the smaller and larger sizes?
Not really. I haven't noticed much. If anything, I think the larger one works better at slower speeds. It's very minuscule, the difference. I just think having a little more mass on the tail makes it a little easier to start up. So if you're fishing like deathly slow, I think that 6 inch is going to be a great addition for that.
So next up in the lineup here, we have the Micro Max, which we've had the Mini Max. I'm a huge Mini Max guy. This Micro Max takes it even to a new level of small here, as we have one kind of in front of us. What was the purpose of this? Why go even smaller than something like a Mini Max?
So we've had a lot of requests for a BFS-style chatterbait, so something people could throw on a spinning rod. Because chatterbaits on a spinning rod are traditionally kind of hard to hook the fish just because of having a 5/0 or even a 3/0 hook in it. So we wanted something with a lighter hook that you could throw on a spinning rod. You can also throw on BFS gear and really just downsize. So this has a size 1 hook in it. We're doing this in 3/16 and 1/4 ounce. All the traditional Mini Max colors. It has that traditional Mini Max shaped head. It's literally like you put a Mini Max into a shrinking machine and you bring it down to a size 1 hook. Same colorations, same packaging design. So it's definitely building off of the success of the Mini Max to create a more finessey version.
And I think you told me as we were talking earlier, it's like 15% smaller, somewhere around that?
Yeah, the blade size comes out to, I think it's like 12 to 15% smaller than the Mini Max.
I know everybody's a little skeptical once you get to a certain size and small blade and everything. Do you have any issues with startup on that blade?
It's honestly, I haven't noticed any difference from the Mini Max. Okay. It's performance-wise, it's on par with the Mini Max itself. And you're right, the smaller the blades get, the less surface area you have. It's a little bit harder to start up. But they've done a great job with the gap in the eye and the hook and all that nonsense. They've done a really great job with putting that in the right place, giving us the right dimensions to where that blade can move freely and start up pretty quick.
Okay, so you'll hear there, we just talked about the Llama tubes, the Swag LT, and the Micro Max. Now, the one thing you'll notice we didn't talk about, and we did this on purpose, is we did not talk about the fuzzy baits. So we didn't talk about the fuzzy nuggets, the fuzzy TRD, or the fuzzy bugs. And that was intentional, and we'll get to that after we discuss these first 3 baits and tell you why we did not include those in today's episode here in a second. But I wanted to address it right off the bat because I can hear some of you now, hey man, that's not all of the new Z-Man baits. I know there were a few that we intentionally left off here for now. But let's start with the Llama tube. This is the bait from Z-Man that I'm most excited about, no questions asked. Why? Because it's insanely practical for where and how I fish. It's the same reason why I love the little Great Lakes finesse plastic so much. It's practical, it's downsized, well-made baits that just fit that Midwest finesse style of fishing to the bone. They're not the flashiest baits out there or the biggest headline grabbers, but they flat out catch fish. And now, the fact that we finally have an ElaZtech traditional tube was good enough, but the fact that it's only 2 inches long in total length makes it even cooler. And I just know that this is going to be a bait that will be in my bag for years to come. I can see this right off the bat. And the other part that they paired nicely with it too, they made some new terminal tackle to go with these Llama tubes. So they come with a VMC redline hook. They have standard 1/16 to 1/4 ounce sizes. But honestly, you can use probably any of your favorite downsized tube heads. Great Lakes Finesse has a good one out too, because you're just going to be poking a hole through and driving that hook all the way through once to rig it. So you don't have to worry about a lot of the problems that ElaZtech traditionally has with not wanting to stay up on the hook shank of certain hooks, or not wanting to stay exposed, or not playing nice with screw locks. This tube should play nice with a lot of your smaller tube tackle. So very excited for this one, the Llama tubes from Z-Man. Now, next up from Z-Man, we had the Swag LT. And Brandon told you about that proprietary wedge tail. It's basically basically just a really fat paddle tail that doesn't have like a part that hangs down on it. It's split side to side and has a really fat kind of midsection to that tail. They're going to come in two sizes, a 5-inch and a 6-inch. The 5-inch looks really, really good, but you heard him in that clip when we pressed him a little bit and asked about the swim action. He said that 6-inch might swim a tad bit more consistently, especially at slower speeds, and that makes sense. Across the board, baits just seem to get a little bit more finicky the smaller they go in size. So the bigger the size, a lot of times the more consistent that motion is going to be. But we didn't have a tank big enough to actually cast and swim this bait like I would like to see, but what little I did see seemed like this is going to be a little bit more of a wide wobble type deal versus a very aggressive, choppy back and forth tail like some other harness swim baits have. So maybe for like colder water is where my mind kind of went with this. When those fish kind of shut off on that mag draft or cull shad bite as it gets a little bit colder at the end of fall, maybe this will keep that soft body swim bait bite alive for another couple weeks if it's a little bit more meandering and a little less aggressive. I don't know for sure, but I want to try it. And then last but not least here, we had the Micro Max. And you guys already know my thoughts on the Micro Max, so I will spare you from hearing it a second time, but nothing really changed after seeing it in person. Yes, it's smaller. I'm just not quite sure it's necessary, I guess. We have so many small chatterbaits out right now from the same company with minimal differences, and so I'm just firmly on Team Minimax for the time being. Okay, now the one thing you did not hear us talk about was the fuzzy series. And here's the deal. I talked to Brandon and Z-Man about those fuzzy baits for a while, and I decided as I'm laying out this show that I'm not going to cover any of the fuzzy baits from anybody, not just Z-Man. So that means we are not covering the Z-Man fuzzy baits. We're not covering the Strike King tumbleweed. We're not covering all of the fuzzy baits and dice baits from Yamamoto. We're not covering the dice bait that was from G-Rat Baits, not Koike. None of the baits I saw this week at ICAST that were of like the dice or fuzzy variety are going to be covered today. Mainly because I feel like they've been beat into oblivion already. If you've listened or paid attention to anything at all over the past 3 or 4 weeks, you have been flooded with dice and fuzzy baits. And I personally, and I'm assuming a lot of you out there listening too, have just dice bait burnout at this point. So funny enough, we are putting together what's shaping up to be here, I don't know, a 3-hour episode maybe at this point, and we are not going to talk about the most talked about trend at ICAST this year. And what that does is it forces us here to look harder for things that I think you'll actually care about and spend that time on those things. I got to spend a lot of time that I would have spent covering those 5 companies' dice baits and seeking out people to talk to me about them and all that kind of stuff. I spent a lot of that time focusing on trying to find like the cooler sort of diamond in the rough companies or products, or taking a closer look at products that I think you actually care about. So I think it was well worth the trade-off, and I doubt that any of you are going to cry about us not spending an hour talking about different dice baits. Hopefully that was the right call, but that's the choice we're going to make here on this episode today. So that's Z-Man. Basically, in order of excitement for me, it's going to be number 1, the Llama Tubes. It's going to be number 2, the Swag LT, and then the Micro Max is going to be down in 3rd, and then I would say the Fuzzy series by default is in 4th place. Not saying that I won't try a fuzzy TRD or a fuzzy bugs at some point, but that fuzzy fatigue is real right now. Okay, so next up here, let's continue walking around ICAST, and let's go from one small bait that I was looking forward to, the Llama Tube, over to some more small baits, and this time from the small bait masters over at Great Lakes Finesse. And to tell us all about the new Micro series, who better than Great Lakes Finesse founder and lead designer, Dan Miguel.
You know, everyone already thought we were super small, and, you know, we're going even smaller now, up to 40% smaller across the board, which to some people might seem absolutely ridiculous. But, you know, as these fish are becoming more and more pressured, and everyone's kind of making smaller baits, we just felt like we needed to go smaller. And so we introduced, you know, a line of Micro series baits. Really, they're the shapes that we gravitate to the most in our, you know, normal fishing. So I'll start with the Juvie Craw. I mean, that bait really created a lot of splash when it came out, and it was a 2.5-inch craw. So we went down to a 2-inch craw, and so now that one's like a lot more compact. It's thinner. We also developed a new mini tube head for it. So we had an original mini pro tube head, which is amazing for mini tubes and that smaller tube size. But now this one's great for like 1.5-inch to 2-inch tubes and fits perfectly in our juvie craw. We also developed a micro underspin. So this is the smallest micro underspin in the industry. So before we built our smallest one on a 1/0 hook. Now we've got one built on a 1/0 Gamakatsu 604, and we have them in sizes from 3/32, 1/8 ounce, and 3/16 with smaller hooks. So you can put a little 2-inch trailer on there. The snack craw has become a staple for jig fishermen, especially finesse jig fishermen, even as like a little Ned bait with those little floating claws. And so now we've gone from 2.1 inches to 1.7, which most people think like, really, does that make a difference? But it actually has a big impact when you're on cold or pressured fish. And then, as well as those other baits, we introduced a 2.25-inch drop minnow, which really was developed for this underspin. We needed a trailer for that, and it's just such a great little micro drop shot bait, downsizer drop shot hook, and when they're really finicky and they're not biting, it's a really good option. So I always tell people, when you're out on the water, they ask, like, when should I throw this micro stuff? I always tell them, whenever you're on the water and you feel like they should be going or they should be biting, that's when you should be thinking about micro. Whether it's cold, the conditions are off, you're post front, high pressure, maybe there's been a lot of people in your area, you're fishing a tournament, think micro series. That's what's going to get you the extra few bites. And just finished the tournament. We won the tournament just a few days ago, and 2 of our fish came on the micro series, and those are fish we circled back on that didn't bite our regular size baits, and we would never have won that tournament without these baits. So micro series is our new introduction, and we're really excited about it.
So can you touch on some of the challenges that probably go into downsizing these baits? I think sometimes, myself included, we get a little cynical sometimes, like, oh, you just go in the CAD system or whatever and you type in beep boop, make this 20% smaller, and it kicks out like a file for you. Yep. Sometimes I'm assuming that's not the case, because I'm looking at some of like the thicknesses of some of the insides and stuff here, and I'm sure that was a challenge. What was the hardest part of making these baits even smaller than they already were?
Yeah, so this was a very challenging product. You'll notice with other small, micro, crappy size baits on the market, there's not a whole lot of detail. They're very simple. You'll notice with these baits, they're very detailed. And when you're doing that, when you're scaling down, the proportions need to be adjusted, whether it's the thickness to accommodate a hook. So, for example, the juvie craw, when you're making a bait that's that detailed, you got to compensate for some of the molding challenges, some of the hook challenges, like being able to hold a hook. Because if we just simply scaled down the profile, it'd be too thin. So we had to beef up some of the internals to get that. So as much as you going in, you think it's going to be simple, the micro juvie craw was still 4 more prototypes before we got it right, even though we had an original design to work from. Same thing with the drop minnow. You got to adjust the width of the bait a little bit. You still got to push it out a bit. You'll really notice it in the snack craw, because if we just simply scaled it down, it wouldn't be wide enough to accommodate a hook. So it's a little bit beefier. The arms are a little bit larger compared to the original. So minor adjustments, but they make a really big difference. So it is challenging to get this kind of detail and quality when you're down into that like 1.5 to 2 inch range.
So I guess my natural question is, when do you think you hit the point where you can't go any smaller? With the level of detail that are in like these juvies and the snack crawls and stuff, are you getting to the point where it's almost exhausted how small you can go with how much detail are in these baits?
I believe that for the most part, there's not many companies here at ICAST that could achieve this level of detail in this size. But here at Pradco, if people don't know, we partnered with them a couple years ago, and their engineering team is incredible. And the juvie craw is a great example of that. Most people don't realize the detail when you pick up that bait and you look around the entire thing, how complex that is. There's probably only 3 companies in this entire building that could achieve that bait. And I'm not going to say that we won't go smaller, but I do think if we had to, we probably could still pull it off. For now, we're really happy with this size, and we think this achieves what we're looking to do on the water.
Okay, so you're getting a new 2-inch Juvie Craw, which needs no explanation. I love the original Juvie Craw. It actually won our Swimmy Award last year for Best New Lure, so it's no surprise that I'm looking forward to another size option here. You're also getting the Snack Craw in a Micro Series size. Same deal there. I throw a Snack Craw on a little Beast Coast OW Sniper all the time. It's a deadly combo, and having an even tinier option is going to be really nice and fun to throw around the creeks and fishing on super light gear around here, that type of thing. But much to my surprise, the thing that caught my eye more than both of those was the new micro underspin and micro drop minnow. So that combo, that smallest little 3/32 ounce underspin with that micro drop minnow on it, looked insanely cool. That is going to be a BFS dream for some of you that are listening to this episode. But even on light spinning gear, I really wish I could show you in my hand how small that little combo was. I mean, it would fit on my pinky finger, no questions asked. So 10 out of 10, small water, smallmouth, or a BFS rig for you BFS folks out there. Now, the one thing I realized as I was talking to Dan, though, is how interesting it is to me that there are cases like this where a size change actually is a big deal. And I guess the only reason that I can make sense of why I felt like this was a bigger deal than something that I complained about a few weeks ago, like another size of a small chatterbait and a variation there, is that you already have like 4 or 5 types of downsized chatterbaits from Z-Man, so it's not special anymore. It's already been done. Whereas with these, for as long as I've known about Great Lakes Finesse, which is, 5 years now, there's only been one size of Snack Crawl that whole time. No changes, no size options, just one. The same thing for the Juvie Crawl that came out 2 years ago. There's only one size, no changes, nothing. And they have a lot of baits that are like that. So when you do get a new size in something like this, it's the first time, so it is a little bigger deal to me. This would be more comparable in my mind to the first time that they brought out like the Mini Max from Z-Man, or the first time they went with a downsized chatterbait. It was a big deal back then. Same thing here, but it's just something interesting I thought of, and I was like, why am I so excited for a different size of these soft plastics from GLF, but I was so anti different size and calling that a new product from Z-Man. And I think it's just the lack of options from Great Lakes Finesse makes this a bigger deal. So other than that, the thing that really sticks out to me that we talked about in the clip with Dan is the detail on these small baits. Getting that level of detail on a 1.7 inch or a 2-inch bait is impressive because your margin of error is so small, and the sheer little amount of material that you have to work with, it's just really cool to see a company not skip out on the details when they do go with that ultra micro size. So really cool stuff from Great Lakes Finesse, the micro series. Okay, next up here, we are going to head back to the Spro booth. So let's walk across the expo floor again. Let's go back to the Spro booth that we were at a little bit earlier when we talked to Kevin Brightwell about that new 300 size reel, because now we are in bait mode. And they had 2 new baits that were definitely worth a closer look, and 2 that are on very different ends of the swim bait spectrum. In fact, I think it's probably about as far apart as we've ever seen from 2 small mass-produced glide baits. So to tell us about it, let's head back and chat with Kevin Brightwell, the founder of KGB Swim Baits and collaborator with Spro.
So we're going to start first with the little guy. This is probably the more reasonable approach for most people. It's the little guy. We've been producing them for about a year now. They're really popular on our handmade baits, but Spro has brought them to the level of being available. And not only that, the Spro one is better than what we can produce by hand. Now, there's still, people love that handmade aspect, so there's still a time and place for those, but these are really, really good baits. Really high speed, no issue. Twitching it, jerking it, getting really erratic, no issue. These do sink a little bit faster, which I actually want. It's for multiple reasons. If it sinks too slow, then they just blow out. At any rate of speed, they just blow out. So we did add a little extra weight to these, but the good effect on that is it makes a great live scope bait. So if you are a scoper, you can actually get this down before the fish move on you. So it's going to be a good hybrid. You can still, even though it's a faster sink, you can still get this bait just subsurface and walk with it. So, and for a little bitty bait, we're still getting about 1.5 foot of glide out of this, which is almost unheard of for a tiny glide bait. Most of the time they can't do that. They just blow out. We nailed it with this one. Spro did a really good job. We worked really closely together and got it right from the start with this one. So now from the mild to the wild side would be the KGB K-Rig. This bait was something that we played with in-house quite a while. For about a year, I was making little samples, but I couldn't really fish them. With resin, the way to attach them, it just wasn't durable. Symmetry, getting it symmetrical was very difficult with resin. They have to be in line. I presented this to Spro actually during an accidental meeting. We showed this to them, and the right guy, he got super excited. He saw it, and he said, we're going to do this. And I was like, okay, well, that was easy. So we went back and forth with samples, got this right. This bait almost suspends. As it is, we put one in the test tank, came back 4 hours later, and it hadn't moved. So it's pretty much a suspending bait. Unique feature on this, which is really cool, is we got 2 line ties. So if you tie to the top, that middle bait right there, the middle bait actually acts as a bill and gets this to dive. And it's a tighter swim that way as well. It swims more like a multi-joint. So it looks like fleeing gizzard shad. Where you can use it, fleeing gizzard shad can work year round, right? During this gizzard shad spawn, tie to that middle one, and it loosens up the action a little bit. They wander a little bit more. 2 totally different actions. There's a lot more to this bait, too, that I hope to be able to go into detail on. This is going to be one of those baits that sitting here talking about it is one thing. We're going to do some live video, on the water video, and really have to show you guys. I've trickled some videos out there, but there is a lot to this bait, a lot of different ways you can work it. It's a hard concept to talk about. We just need to show you guys more.
All right, so there you heard Kevin. We appreciate Kevin's time walking us through both of those. Let's start with the one that I'm most excited about. And this is definitely up there for me in terms of baits that I was most excited about at the whole show, period. And if you know me, you know I love my resin KGB glide baits, and I think they are the most consistent, well-tuned glide baits that I've ever used, and they are worth the high price tag. I know it hurts to spend that money, but I promise you, if you are into glide baits, it's worth it. And now they also have a track record of producing a great plastic version of his original resin baits with the Spro Chad Shad that came out about 2 years ago. And that bait is weighted so well that you almost can't mess it up at a fraction of the price of what an actual resin Chad Shad costs. When you throw that Spro Chad Shad out, it almost auto-corrects, and it finds its balance so seamlessly. For an ABS kind of plastic version of a swim bait, it is a killer product. So Spro and KGB know what they're doing in terms of taking a great resin bait and turning it into a more plastic kind of mass-produced version. But then, about a year ago, from KGB, so not Spro, just KGB, the resin side, came the little guy. And Kevin made this resin little guy that has been borderline impossible to get your hands on. It's a little bit smaller. I think it's around like 4.5 to 5 inch bait, somewhere around there. It kind of fits right in the palm of your hand, and it's become one of the hottest handmade glides of 2025. So naturally, what comes next is the Spro version. So I was told that the little guy is going to be 120 millimeters, and to give you a point of reference there, the original Chad Shad is 180 millimeters. So this little guy is 2/3 the size of the regular Chad, and I cannot wait to get my hands on one of these. If it is half as good as the Chad Shad was, these are going to sell like crazy, even with the relatively high price tag for that small of a bait. So the little guy is on my list of awesome surprises here at ICAST 2025. And then we move on to the K-Rig. And the whole world saw this when it was included in the Bassmaster.com new product preview about a week or so before ICAST started. And I actually don't think it was supposed to be in there, but it was, which means once it was posted, it was fair game to talk about, and the whole world collectively went, what the heck is that thing? Myself included, right? I was definitely in that camp as well when I saw the picture for the first time. Now, here's the thing though. When you know and respect someone as much as I do Kevin Brightwell, they kind of get the benefit of the doubt a little bit, where some other companies might not. If some other companies came out with something like that, I would be a little bit more vocal and be like, what in the living tarnation is that abomination of a bait? But I bit my tongue for a little bit because I thought, you know what? I know Kevin, I know he knows what he's doing, and I don't want to end up on the wrong side of this when it turns out that this is a sick bait and we all immediately went to discredit it. So I was playfully curious about this bait, but I kept a relatively open mind, and I'm glad that I did. So it's funny, when I ran into Kevin, a little peek behind the curtain here, I saw him on day one, and I said something like, hey, how's the response to, the K-Rig been? And he just sort of smiled and looked at me, and he went, I know you're skeptical and then a word family show, so I won't say it, but crap, right? And I just laughed and I said, well, yeah, a little. I mean, you can't expect me not to be when you just drop something like that on the world with not really a whole lot of explanation. And we've just never seen anything like it before, so I didn't really know what to expect. And he told me some stuff off camera about the process and the purpose behind it. And I'm not going to go into too much detail about what he said because, like I've said a million times here on the show, it is not our place to break news and try and beat people to the punch and get, inside scoops and tell people, yeah, we won't say anything and then just go out and blast it all over the internet. That's not my MO ever. I really respect the conversations that I have with people and that they're nice enough to kind of trust me with and tell me when we're not recording. And so that is kind of like sacred ground. So I'm not going to tell you everything that Kevin told me about this bait, but if you listen very closely to the audio clip of our interview with Kevin, there is a sentence in there where he says, and I quote, "There's a lot more to this bait that I hope to be able to go into detail on soon." And that is the sentence right there that you need to pay attention to. I want you guys to make a mental bookmark here, take a little snapshot in your brain, and remember that sentence in the coming months, because there is a lot more to this bait than meets the eye. And out of respect for Kevin and Spro and everybody that was involved in this, that's all I'm going to say right now. But let me just tell you that after learning what he was talking about and us sitting down and really going into a deep dive in it, it makes sense. So I know that's lame. I know that's not fair to say to you guys, hey, I know something that you don't, right? I hate when people do that, but I only bring it up to tell you guys, don't write off this bait as like a quirky headline grabber. There is a lot more to this bait that we will find out soon enough. Okay, and that is from Spro and KGB, two really cool glide baits there. And that actually takes us to our third of probably the 5 or so themes at ICAST this year. The first was fuzzy baits, which have been beat into oblivion, so we decided to skip over them. The second trend that we really saw was everybody coming out with minnow baits. So I know that kind of started last year, but holy moly, did it blow up again this year. Everybody is coming out with minnow baits and strolling baits and rolling baits and those things that kind of go side to side, sort of like a Sakamata shad, like that type deal. Everybody had something like that at their booth all around this expo. So again, we skipped over it because it's a little boring. I don't feel like we really need to go in that much detail about minnows, but everyone had like straight tail minnows, vertical fork tail minnows, horizontal fork tail minnows, you name it, they were all over the place. And again, it's boring. They're all similar. We're going to skip that. But the third theme here was ABS plastic glide baits. And this seems to be one that way less people are talking about, and I'm kind of curious why. Why did the dice get so much hate, but the plastic single jointed glide baits got hype and everybody is excited for them? Maybe it's just simply because glide baits are cooler than dice. I don't know. That could definitely be. But I think there were more companies that jumped on the plastic single jointed glide bait train than there were brands that jumped on the fuzzy baits train by a mile. So right off the top of my head, let's go through a couple of them. You have the Spro Little Guy, obviously, the Spro K-Rig. There's two right there. But those are from a company that has at least done the plastic single jointed glide bait thing before and done it well. But then there was like the new Shimano Gravitator, which might have been my next favorite glide bait, to be honest. That flash boost that they have inside those clear colorways is awesome. It's basically a little swinging piece of holographic material that flutters almost perpetually inside that bait at even the slightest movement, and it stays moving forever, even when the bait's standing still. Super cool. I'm not really sure how they do it, but it's an awesome little piece of technology inside those Gravitator glide baits. I got a cool video of one of them that I should post here soon. If you guys want to see it, just message me. I'll send it to you. But the Gravitator from Shimano was cool. And then you had the Hogfather Jr., which was a collaboration between Tater Hog and Strike King. And honestly, I think it was the only thing that I thought was noteworthy from Strike King this year, which is why we just sort of skipped over them. There really wasn't a lot that excited me at the Strike King booth, and that's kind of depressing because I usually look forward to Strike King baits. But the Hogfather Jr. is where they took basically a really famous Hogfather glide bait from Tater Hog, which is another really well-known resin glide bait maker, and they collaborated on this mass-produced version very similar to what Spro and KGB did a couple years ago. So you had that. Then you had a new hard version of the Sneaky Pete from G-Rat Baits that was made in collaboration with Bassmaster Elite Series Pro Steve Kennedy. You had the Yozuri Pro Series glide bait. You had a new brand of glide bait come out that was called Cinch, SYNCH, and that is part of the American Baitworks family of companies. So the same company that owns Netbait and Scum Frogs and Halo Rods, I think, and Bait Fuel and all that kind of stuff. And those were honestly the wildest looking glide baits I saw all week. I need to see a swim video of them, but I got the impression that these were one of those baits that's kind of made to catch fishermen and not fish. That's the vibe I got off of these. They were kind of like over the top looking, a lot of really detailed carving and texturing on them. It was just a weird combo of realistic and aggressive, so I don't really know how to feel about the cinch baits. You had one called the Laughing 170 that showed up at the Gamakatsu booth, and I'm guessing that's probably a bait that they brought over from Japan that they're bringing here to the US market now, would be my guess. Then you had a 9-inch version of the Buka Trick Shad, and even more that I'm definitely forgetting, but there's like 8 or so right there. So the plastic glide baits were everywhere. So that was trend number 3, plastic glide baits galore. Trend number 4 is going to be there were some big names missing at ICAST this year. And it was definitely a trend. I noticed it as I was walking around. There were a lot of companies that I'm used to seeing at ICAST that just simply weren't there for one reason or another. A lot of battery companies, a lot of cooler companies, kayak companies, accessories that I'd got used to seeing at ICAST year after year that decided to pull out of ICAST and not spend that money on booths this year. Most notably was Pure Fishing. And when Pure Fishing decides not to come to ICAST, that means that there are a ton of really popular, again, sort of legacy brands that just aren't at the show. So this year we were missing Abu Garcia, we were missing Fenwick, we're missing Ugly Stick, Savage Gear, Spider Wire, Penn, Plano, and of course, Berkley. And I always look forward to the Berkley releases, even though I know everybody loves to rip on them. But to me, they're affordable, they're accessible, and at the end of the day, let's be honest, they're baits that I'm probably more likely to use versus a lot of the other baits that I see at ICAST, just because Berkley baits are more readily available at big box stores and Walmart down the street and stuff like that. So I personally just buy a lot of Berkley baits. I'm the first to admit that. So when I heard that Berkley and a lot of these Pure Fishing brands weren't going to be at ICAST this year, I actually took it upon myself to reach out to Berkley directly and say, hey, I know you guys aren't coming to ICAST, but would you have like a quick 20 minutes or so to hop on a video call to kind of meet and sort of discuss any new baits that you might have coming down the pike in 2025? Because it just seems weird to have this whole episode where we try to give you a big overarching view of the fishing industry and what new products are coming out without talking about probably the biggest family of brands in fishing completely. So Berkley was nice enough to respond, and they set up a meeting, and we got to run through some of their new baits. Now, they've got a few that we can't talk about today, and they even have a few that they wouldn't tell me about at all yet, even if I swore not to say anything until they were released. They were pretty close-lipped about a few things, but they did tell me about a few baits, and they gave me the green light to include them in this episode. Now, one of the 2 baits that we're about to talk about, I've definitely seen hit social media already, so I know that one is at least out there. You guys might have even seen it already, but the other bait I haven't heard anybody talk about. I haven't seen anything on social media yet, so I hope I'm not going to get in trouble for saying this, but I made sure to double check in that meeting, and both of them said, yes, you can talk about these 2 baits starting July 22nd. So here we are, and that's what we're going to do. So the first bait we're going to talk about hit the internet last week, and it's the shallow money badger. The regular money badger has become sort of a cult favorite amongst certain folks, specifically like multi-species bass and walleye guys in particular, but a lot of people have really kind of fallen in love with that little money badger. The only problem is the multiple sizes of the money badger they currently offer. They dove anywhere between like 4 and 14 feet, depending on the size. So they're definitely more of a medium diver, I would say, until now. Now you can get the shallow money badger. And the biggest difference here, one is obviously it's going to dive shallower, right? It's in the name. I don't think we really need to explain that. But the other is that they changed the bill material on the shallow money badger. The regular money badger is sort of a regular, plastic or Lexan type bill, what you're normally used to seeing on a crankbait. The shallow money badger is going to have a circuit board lip. And I thought that was pretty interesting. I don't know if that's just because it's more durable. I don't know if that lends itself better to certain shallow baits to keep it up a little bit. I have no clue, right? I'm not really sure why they went with a circuit board on this one, but it's a cool change. I think a lot of times when you see companies come out with a different size or a different running depth, they just change the bill angle, and that seems to be what most of these folks are doing. They really took the time and said, no, let's sort of re-engineer and reinvent this bait into what we actually want it to do and not just mail it in and change the bill angle by, 4 degrees or whatever it is. So the new shallow money badger is coming out here soon. The second bait of note here is a bait that, again, I hope I don't get in trouble for talking about, but it's called the Power Vibe. Now, if you've ever seen the Berkley Power Switch, that is like a straight tail, pre-rigged, kind of scoping minnow style bait, pre-weighted, ready to fish right out of the pack. Well, Berkley looks like they've kind of taken that same approach with the Power Vibe, but this is going to be a much more useful bait to us regular anglers that don't really use a lot of live scope. It's still pre-rigged right out of the box. It's like a power switch, but with a slightly bigger kind of belly on the body and then a vertical fork tail. So this Power Vibe is almost like a silent, soft, lipless style bait. It's a bait that I think you can rip and let fall. You can sort of retrieve it on a straight retrieve with some twitches. You can shake it. It's a very versatile bait. But when I saw some of the swim videos in our meeting, and I can tell you, I saw them fish it all these different ways, I'm going to fish this almost like I would fish a blade bait around here. I'm going to go with a really slow, steady retrieve with intermittent rips upward and letting it fall back down to depth and then continue that slow reel. That's where it looked best to me. It's got that sort of lipless look to it underwater, but it has a little bit tighter movement to it, kind of in that blade bait area. So I'm looking forward to this one to try it out. I think this could be a cold water killer around here. They've got some really cool colorways. They're in clam packaging. They're protected. It's going to come in 4 sizes. So they've got a 1.5 inch, which weighs in at 1/16 of an ounce. They have a 2.25 inch, which is 3/16. They have a 3-inch version, which is 3/8 of an ounce. And they have a 3.75, which is 5/8 of an ounce. So smaller, big, light or heavy, a cool little pre-rigged mashup of like a minnow, a lipless bait, and a blade bait. So other than that, you had some different color extensions and size extensions of some baits that Berkley already has out. And then they gave us a big teaser that Berkley will be rolling out what they told me were baits they were very excited about in the next few months. Those were the ones they wouldn't even tell me about yet. But I wanted to give you guys a little bit of update. It feels weird not talking about any pure fishing brands in our ICAST download. So I want to make sure I at least gave them the chance to say, hey, you got anything cool coming out? These were the 2 things that we have at the moment. So that's trend number 4 here. We had some big names missing from ICAST. So far we have fuzz, we have minnows, we have plastic glide baits, and we have big names missing. Next up, our 5th trend here, we had kayak motors. And all I can say is finally. So finally, the market is bringing choice to kayak motors, specifically middle and rear mounted kayak motors. We have all the bow mount trolling motors with spot lock and all that kind of stuff, Minn Kota, and everybody does a great job with those. But for the rest of us, we need middle or rear mounted motors, depending on how shallow you fish and how much current you're in. And up until now, your options were basically Torqeedo, Newport, or Bixby. And Bixby is super user-friendly. They're great folks, but that motor just lacked a little bit of power for what I need. The Torqeedos were great, but you have to use their own batteries, which kneecaps you a little bit in terms of a customization standpoint. And then Newport is okay, but it has its quirks, and I've been pretty vocal about some of the things that I wish they would fix with that design too, which again is basically a Torqeedo, except they let you use your own battery. Well, folks, like the Kool-Aid man busting through the brick wall of your house, here comes Garmin. And holy cow, did they change up the kayak motor market. Now, give it a chance. I know you guys probably saw it. It's very expensive. It's out of a lot of people's price point. But just like some other products we've talked about today, this can have bigger ramifications than just what you see right now, which we'll break down here in a second. But first, we need all the details. So we talked to John from Garmin to break down all of the features of this brand new kayak motor, the Force Current.
So what you're looking at here is the new Garmin Force Current kayak trolling motor. So what's really neat that we did with this is it's really powerful. It has a brushless motor. It is also controlled through the foot pedals. So the foot pedals are wirelessly connected to the trolling motor itself for both propulsion and steering. So we can come in here and we've got forward, we have reverse, The dual pedals run off of AA batteries, which will last a season. But with the technology that we put into that, we also allow you to anchor lock with a little switch here, heading hold also, and those are programmable. This is 12 volt or 24 volt, 30 pounds of thrust at 12 volt, and 50 pounds of thrust at 24 volt. You also have on-off switches right here on the trolling motor itself. And the bundles can come a couple different ways. You can get the force current with the handheld remote control. This remote control can do a couple cool things here. Number one, anchor lock. You want to hold your position, it will hold your position. If you want to gesture steer, we can press this button and then it can follow my hand movement and steer me in a direction. It also gives me ability to do jog control. So each one of these arrows is a 5-foot increment. So if I'm on anchor lock, it allows me to then move to another spot and then anchor lock me in that particular position. We also have an easy stow and deploy. So if we come around this side over here, you'll actually see that we can simply and easily stow it and deploy it and lock it in. When it's in the stow position, the foot pedals will be shut off so you won't accidentally turn the motor on. Lightweight, it's 20 pounds. It's easy to take off. With a little quarter turn, you can disconnect the power here and then just take it off the mount. It's a standard 4-hole pattern to mount on the back transom of the actual kayak itself. We also include a man overboard lanyard here. So with this MOB or man overboard, once that hits the water and is submerged, the trolling motor will completely shut off. And then finally, if you have a Garmin GPS map unit or Echo map unit, you can wirelessly connect to your force current trolling motor and actually control it right through the Garmin multifunction displays. So with it, it's easy, it's intuitive, it's powerful. That's the new Garmin Force Current trolling motor for kayaks.
Couple follow-up questions here. So I know you said, the 12 volt versus 24 volt, and you're giving some different thrust there. We talked, earlier too about that thrust number and about how sometimes that's not quite as cut and dry as people think. Can you give someone a little bit of a rundown on what that means and why when they see those numbers, they might not be completely apples to apples compared to some other motors you see out there?
Absolutely. So what we actually do is we use an industry standard thrust measurement. So it's an ISO 13342. That number lets us know that, yes, this is 30 pounds of thrust or 50 pounds of thrust, depending on if it's 12 or 24 volt. And so some of the other industry trolling motors that are out there for kayaks might state 70 pounds of thrust. So we're very similar in that thrust rating with our 50. So we had this up the other day out in the pond here at ICAST, doing 5 miles an hour in a heavy kayak. So it's got as much power as what you would need with it. So got a 6-inch travel up and down. So if you needed to kind of raise it up a little bit, if you were in shallower water, you have the ability with the locking collar to raise this up and down a little bit.
Cool. And then obviously you can adjust that a little bit too when you're mounting this kayak. If you need it higher, you can put a buffer in there and mount it a little bit higher.
Absolutely. Yep. The foot pedals, like I said, they're wireless, but they're also on that track, and then you can adjust them forward and reverse if you wanted to on there.
Last question would be durability of the actual motor itself, because you've got a lot of folks that are in really shallow water, you're banging rocks, you're doing all this stuff, and in past kayak motors we've seen rock guards be really important. Is that something that's necessary for something like this?
So this trolling motor is built to last. It comes with a 3-year warranty. It covers both fresh and salt water, and then the shaft is actually a limited lifetime on the shaft of the trolling motor itself. So really looking back at our original scissor mount force trolling motors and our pivot mount Kraken trolling motors, they hold up really well in rough conditions. I've been running a Force Kraken for a while, and I beat it up. I'm out of Florida. I have a lot of rocks and oyster bars that I'm running over, and you'll shear a pin or break a plastic prop, before you would ruin any of the motors on the lower unit there.
Okay, so there's your quick run through from John, but guys, we got to talk about this one for a bit. So when this one was first announced, the only thing that anybody wanted to say was there's no way that I'm paying $3,600 for a kayak motor. And I agree, but hopefully you're seeing a theme here in this episode that there are bigger pictures to things that we need to take a look at. So if you're a diehard kayak angler and you use a motor, especially if you fish rivers or creeks like we do, or up shallow or in current, this should get you jacked up. Because if you currently use an NK180 or a Torqeedo or anything like that, you should be pumped. Not because you're going to go out there and buy one of these, but because of the direction that it's pushing stern-mounted kayak motors. Because up until now, we really have those three options we talked about at the beginning. And if you're in heavy current or moving water, you really only have two options. It's basically Torqeedo, Newport, or nothing. And Newport has been dominating that kayak motor market in sales for the past few years, it feels like, and coasting off of an old, outdated design that wasn't really even theirs to begin with, that really hasn't had any innovation to it. Even when they came out with the NK180 Pro, there's really not a whole lot different in that. It's just a little bit more of like an efficiency thing and fixing a little bit of the throttle issue and stuff, but nothing mind-blowing in terms of trying to push that design forward. And that's because no one has had to innovate because they have the market right now. Well, that is changing. When Garmin enters the chat in any product category, competition better watch out, because Garmin is known for over-engineering their products and bringing cutting-edge tech and designs and stuff like that to market. And they did that with this motor. This motor is like the Terminator of rear-mounted kayak motors. There's just never been anything like it available to us until now. So let's run through it. Why does this design matter? Well, first off, the wireless foot steering is... I'm not going to say the words, and I want to say it so bad, but I'm not going to do it, those words that everybody says at ICAST. But if there was a time to use it, this is it. But I'm not going to say it. I'm just going to say this is a huge step in the right direction for kayak fishing. The fact that we could see a world where you don't have to run tubing or plumb steering lines through the hull of your kayak and drill holes in your kayak, and then those steering lines create friction and possible leak points. And while drilling holes directly in your hull doesn't always void the warranty, if that area around that hole starts to fail, that may not be covered by the warranty, so you're risking that. Also, it's a hassle, and you have to disconnect and reconnect the steering lines every time you want to detach the motor. Your steering lines can fray. For all the good that a regular good old steering line has, there are some major setbacks to regular paracord or Spectra cable steering lines. Well, with this motor, no more, because the steering pedals mount like a normal steering pedal would right on the sidewall of the gunnel of your kayak, but you don't have to push that full pedal mechanism forward and backwards. You just tilt it in place with like the front of your foot and then the heel of your foot, similar to what you would do on like a traditional trolling motor. But because there are two of them, a right and a left, they've developed this really intuitive pedal system and algorithm where you can steer and accelerate both forward and reverse, by the way, with those pedals in one motion. So it's almost like a zero-turn riding lawnmower. If you push both pedals forward at the same force, you're going to go forward and you're going to go straight. If you push both pedals forward, but your right one is a little bit more pushed, then you're going to start to turn right. Now, if you exaggerate it in both directions and you push your right foot forward and your left foot back, then you're going to do like sharper turn almost in circles to the right. And then the same thing for reverse. If you push both heels back, you're going to go in reverse. If you push both back and then you push the right one back a little bit more, you're going to have a turn, like all that type of stuff. You get the picture. A really cool design and program that they've written into these pedals, all connected via Bluetooth. And this, ladies and gentlemen, is innovation. But that's just one of like the, 30 features that geek me out about this kayak motor. Like the fact that on the pedals, there are these two bumper buttons that are really easy to hit with your foot by sliding your foot toward the center of your kayak. One of those buttons puts the motor in anchor lock. Yes, anchor lock. Your motor will automatically keep you in the same GPS location. So you can stand up and you can fish that specific spot without sitting down and staying on the controls. That's never been available to us in a rear-mounted option that's made to be rear-mounted. Yes, you could hook up like Minn Kota backwards or something, but you guys know what I mean. An actual rear-mounted kayak motor, we've never had an anchor lock or a spot lock before. Now, the other button that you have on the other foot comes pre-programmed as a heading hold. So that means it will hold your kayak in the same direction that it's pointed. So if you want to face north, it will hold you north. If you want to face east, it'll hold you east. Super cool. And both of those foot buttons are programmable, which means if you want to swap that out and you don't want heading hold and you want that to like be you marking a waypoint on your Garmin unit, you can do that. How nice would that be? Just to be going along, you see something on your side imaging or forward or whatever, you just boom, hit that button with your foot and it drops a waypoint. That is so convenient. And then this kayak motor also comes with a remote. So you can stand up and keep that thing around your neck and move around. You can do a ton from that remote. You can steer, you can accelerate, you can hit spot lock, all of that. You can also jog your position by just hitting arrows on that remote. So if you're spot locked on a spot and then you hit the right button, it will move your kayak to the right by like 5 feet and then hold your spot there. So you can move around like a submerged brush pile or whatever with the click of a button without ever sitting down. That remote also has gesture steer, which means quite simply, you can point that remote in the direction you want your kayak to go, and your kayak will go in that direction. It is as crazy as it sounds. If I want to go, 2 o'clock to the right, I just point that remote that way, and my kayak will turn and go that direction. Super, super cool. Wild stuff in a rear-mounted kayak motor. Also, if you have a power pole unit hooked up to your kayak, the motor will intuitively connect and decide when you hit anchor lock whether to use your power pole or whether to use your motor to anchor lock. So if I hit anchor lock in 4 feet, it's going to deploy my power pole because it knows I'm shallow enough to use my power pole. Meanwhile, if I hit anchor lock in 30 feet, it's going to use my motor. It knows my power pole is not going to reach down that far, so the motor it is. Crazy. Another one of my favorite features of this is that when you pull the cord to raise the motor up like you would any other rear mount motor, once it's up, the foot pedals no longer work. So that means if you accidentally hit your foot pedals or whatever, your prop is not going to start, which can be really dangerous, especially when you're loading and unloading your kayak. We've all accidentally bumped our throttle on our Newport or our Torqeedo and started that prop up unintentionally when it's raised. That is not a problem with this force current from Garmin. They also added a quick release of the battery cable at the motor. Thank you, Garmin. One of my biggest pet peeves with my Newport is the fact that the quick connect is at the battery and not at the motor, which means that I had to splice and rewire a quick connect at the back of my motor. It should already come there. If you have your kayak rigged and you have your lines ran through your kayak, you want the quick connect to be at the motor so you can take the motor off and leave your kayak wired. I don't want to have to pull my wires out of my kayak every single time I want to disconnect my motor or bring my battery out with it. I want all of that stuff to be able to be left in place. Garmin is giving you that. You can take the battery off, you can take the motor off. All of that is able to kind of quickly disconnect. Thank you, Garmin. Sincerely, everybody who owns an NK180 Pro. Now, the one thing I saw and everybody's biggest question is power. And the stats on this motor say that if you hook up a 12-volt battery, you're going to get 30 pounds of thrust. And if you hook up a 24-volt battery, you're going to get 50 pounds of thrust. And that was everybody's biggest gripe right off the bat, other than the price of it, was lack of power. An NK180, which is what I use, is listed at 65 pounds of thrust. So if I use a 24-volt battery in both of these kayak motors, I supposedly get 65 pounds of thrust with the Newport and 50 pounds of thrust with the Garmin. So 15 pounds less if you're comparing apples to apples with a 24-volt motor. Now, the thing that no one's telling you is that Garmin uses an ISO rating of 13342. It's, from what I understand and what they explained to me, more of like an engineering-based measuring than a lot of the competition does. I was basically told by multiple people at Garmin that their 50 pounds of thrust that they list with that 24-volt motor is equal to about 70 pounds of thrust on the competition's measurement scale. So that means that this motor would be right at or just above an NK180, which gets 65 pounds of thrust. They're claiming that theirs is about 70, even though it's listed at 50. With the same battery, moral of the story is your power should be about the same. Now, it's not fair to compare this to an NK300 because an NK300 is a 36-volt motor. The Garmin is a 24-volt, so they are completely different motors, different powers. You need to compare this to the NK180, NK180, not the NK300, if you want to compare apples to apples and have a genuine comparison and not just try to prove a point. So the bottom line is Garmin says that this will match or outperform the thrust of that NK180, the leading competition on the market in the 24-volt space, again, based on what I was told from their product development team and engineers and stuff like that. But for those that don't need that amount of sheer power, it's also cool because you can use a 12-volt battery in this Garmin Force Current. You can't do that with a Newport, a Torqeedo, or a Bixby. None of those options let you use a 12-volt motor. Newport requires 24, Torqeedo requires their own battery, Bixby requires their own battery. So this is a first if you're not fighting super heavy current and you're just going around lakes or ponds or more like kind of quiet or doable water. Well, then guess what? The 12-volt might be a great option for you and you don't have to go out and buy an expensive 24-volt heavier battery. It also comes standard with a man overboard key fob. So once that sensor hits the water, if you fall out of the kayak for any reason, that motor automatically stops as a safety precaution. So it is not tethered to you. Instead, it actually senses water. That's the kill switch on this. Now, as far as the power for the pedals themselves go, they're powered by AA batteries. And they said that they're so low drain that they will last a full season on a single use of AA batteries. So those AA's have been tested to withstand 5 days a week for 48 weeks in these pedals. Insane battery efficiency out of just the pedals alone. You don't have to worry about charging them or anything like that. Just throw some AA's and you're good to go for a whole season. And the guy that I talked to said he's been using the same pair of AA batteries in his pedals since they first tested these things out. That's been 2.5 years at this point, and he's been beating them up pretty good, and he hasn't changed the AA batteries once. And that's because they wrote into the programming here that they go into a sleep mode when they're not in use to conserve that battery life. Other things here, the whole motor weighs 20 pounds. It's got a 16-inch shaft that can move like 6 inches one way or the other. I mean, I could go on for, an hour and a half about all the features on this thing. But this is what we want out of ICAST. This is the whole point of new products being brought to market. It's got everything you could want. It's got the wow factor. It's got truly new tech that we've never seen before in kayak fishing, at least from a brand that's accessible to us here in the United States. The only thing I think you can knock it for is price. And that brings us to a bigger point here. Innovation and cheap do not go together. You have to pick one. Do you want cheap or do you want actual innovation? When something first comes to market and it's truly new, it's expensive. Think back, the first flat screen TVs were $15,000 and now I can go half a block down the street and buy one for $150 from Walmart. The first VCRs were over $1,000 and some of you young people don't even know what a VCR is. But about, 10 or 20 years ago, once that technology had been out for a long time and people were still using VCRs, you could buy them for $19 at Walmart instead of $1,000 when they first came out. The point is, when products first come out and they first go to market, they're expensive. R&D is expensive. Product development is expensive. But what it does is push the market forward, and soon there will be competition. It will force other companies to try and keep up. So these companies that have coasted for years and years on subpar designs now have to sack up and innovate, or at least try and copy what Garmin is doing. And when they try and copy that, prices go down. So some of the things you're seeing in this kayak motor, wireless foot steering, the connectivity, the intuitive accelerometers in those pedals. The cool things about this motor, other companies will try and emulate at some point, and that competition, like I said, brings prices down. The passing of time plus competition equals lower prices. So we should look at this kayak motor not as a flop or a miss from Garmin because it's out of your price range or it has a few small things that you'd like to change. I think we should look at this as a huge win because it's going to push kayak motors forward, specifically rear-mounted motors, which have been stagnant for a long time. And that's coming from someone that, again, for the billionth time on the show, has zero stake in whether or not Garmin likes me or not. I've never worked with them. I probably never will. Just as a consumer and someone who has desperately wanted to see the limits pushed of stern-mounted kayak motors, I can't tell you how pumped I am for this product. So that's the Garmin Force Current kayak motor, but then we had a couple other kayak motors around the show as well. We had the one from Yak Attack, which I'm pretty sure they actually changed the name of mid ICAST, because when I saw it in person on Wednesday, it was called the Yak Attack Flux Drive, and then on Wednesday, it was called the Yak Attack Yak Drive. They had a different sticker on the front of it. So I'm not really sure what went on with that, but it's a little weird. But then there was all kinds of drama about how Yak Attack released this motor, but someone found the exact same motor in China already with a different name on it. And then there were the accusations of Yak Attack stealing it and blah, 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 all that stuff. It sounds like, and again, this is from very, very limited stuff that I know, it sounds like Yak Attack probably works with this company in China, and they probably have an agreement where that company, whatever that company's name is able to distribute this product in China, and then Yak Attack has the rights to distribute it in the United States, and they probably have some sort of partnership. Companies do that stuff all the time. I don't think it's worth getting upset about on the Yak Attack side of things. Again, the only time I get upset is when people are really trying to hide the ball and they're trying to lie to consumers. We've seen that in the past a little bit. And that's where I start to get a little uneasy, and I don't really like that. I don't think Yak Attack was doing that here. I just think this is probably a motor that has like a partnership where one company is selling it in China and one company is selling it in America, and that type of thing happens. But that's a whole different conversation. But this Yak Attack motor, at least for right now, it looks like only slots into like the Hobie Mirage Drive. So it can slot into the middle part of a Hobie. It can slot into that middle part of a Hoodoo, or anybody that uses that similar sort of pedal drive system that's right there in front of you that has like the kick fins. It seems like that's what they really went for on this. Maybe they'll change it at some point and it'll be available for other types of kayaks. For right now, looks like it's probably for the Hobie and knockoff Hobie market at the moment. But I will tell you, if you want another budget-friendly kayak motor that slots right in the middle, right there on a Hobie or Hoodoo or anything like that, those similar drives, one of the diamonds in the rough that I found as I was walking around ICAST was a Chinese company called Haswing, Haswing. And they basically make a motor that looks very similar to that Yak Attack motor, the exact same price as well, $1,500 for both of these, but it looked a little better built to me. It was clean, it was all black, it had a safety mechanism to lock the prop when not in use, it had spot lock, it had all the things that you could want in a good little middle hull slotted kayak motor that fits that kind of Hobie design for $1,500. It also looks like they ship nationwide in the US from China, so you can buy these. But then the cool thing about that same company, Haswing, is that they offered a bare bones version of this that didn't have spot lock. It didn't have any of that. It didn't even turn. You would have to use your own rudder or, things like that to actually turn it. The motor itself just went straight forward and backwards, but it was only $500. It still slots right in that Hobie drive, but it had 10 overall speeds. It had 5 in forward, 5 in reverse. It took a 12-volt battery, probably the most affordable, again, bare bones kayak motor that I saw this week that looks like it would do the job without breaking the bank, especially if you have a Hobie or a Hoodoo or something like that, from a company called Haswing, Haswing. Okay, so that was another trend at ICAST here, kayak motors. And as we heard, one of those was insanely impressive, like jaw-dropping to me. And the other two were serviceable options on a budget, especially if you have those specific kayaks like a Hobie or anything that has that knockoff Mirage drive in it. And then there was one more kayak motor option that really turned a lot of heads in that convention center, especially after Friday, hint, hint, from a company called FluxJet. Now, if you paid attention at all to anything I posted over the weekend on social media, this was like the first thing that I actually put up. It was just a really quick video of this interesting kayak that I saw in the new product showcase that I had no other context about. I didn't talk to anybody about it. I didn't know if it was a big deal or not. But of all the products in that new product showcase, when I first walked in, this one piqued my interest a lot more than almost anything else that I saw right off the bat. And the reason is pretty simple. This kayak comes with a recessed jet motor in the back of it. So to tell us all about it, let's check in with the CEO of FluxJet, Jason Woods.
All right, everybody, we are here with Jason at FluxJet. Jason, you guys have made quite a splash here this year in a great way. Something that we always, kind of clamor for in the kayak industry is innovation, especially on the motor side. We've seen some of that around the show this year, but nothing quite like what is in front of us right now. So can you walk us through this FluxJet and what makes it so special from kind of, stern to bow?
Yeah, I think the first thing that makes it special is that we're really the first company that's building a top-down, purpose-built, single-unit boat with the drive built into it. So
So everybody else, there's boat manufacturers and there's drive manufacturers. We're doing the whole thing as one unit. And the advantages that you get by doing that are huge. I mean, this hull is designed to work with this drive and can only work with this drive. So that advantage alone makes it, we can just be more efficient than anybody else out there with that just by itself. So
what challenges do you have designing a hull for a jet motor versus a regular kayak? Like, it's not as easy, like you said, as just dropping in a jet motor and being like, oh, it's efficient and ready to go. What do you have to do to this hull that you don't have to do to a different kind of traditional kayak?
For me, it's opportunities, right? So all challenges are really opportunities. So it gave us the ability to, first and foremost, like we started with the weedless aspect. We wanted to make the hull is integral into making the weedless function of this boat work. So we started there, and then we really wanted to, because it's going to be powered from the start, we really wanted to rethink how does this hull need to function? Because with that amount of power, all of a sudden, this is a semi-planing hull. If you look at all the other kayaks out there, they hit a wall about 5 miles an hour, and you're just burning energy. They cannot go any faster because of the tail squat from the outboard on the back and that sort of thing. The jet gives us the opportunity to really get this thing to be super, super efficient on the water. It gives us that weedless effect of being able to split floating debris out of the way before it even gets to the pump. So basically, just top to bottom, having control over the entire system gives us opportunities that you cannot have with two separate pieces. So
what about the features of this? Obviously, this is a very feature-rich kayak. The jet motor is a big part of that. You don't have a prop hanging down. It's kind of more built in to where us shallow river guys, you're not worrying about banging a prop on the bottom. But you've put a lot of really thoughtful pieces into this, from kind of recessed places and skid plates. And can you walk us through some of the other things that are on this kayak too?
Yeah, I mean, Steve Jobs said it best. He's like, all technology should be beautiful or it should be invisible. And we definitely took that ethos in this boat. I want the boat to do things for you that you don't even realize it's doing. All the tech is hidden inside the boat. It's all pre-wired. All the lighting's ready to go. It's got voltage regulators built in for it, so it'll break out your 12 volt for your accessories. It's just all of the things I tried to think through to give you something that you could just pull out of a box, you drop a battery in, and this thing is ready to run without having to install anything. You don't have to attach stuff. You just look at it and it just looks like a regular kayak. It just happens to be powered.
So what about, like, I know the questions are going to be about reverse and battery choice and things like that on the techie side of the motor side. What do you recommend on this?
Yeah, so the boat has forward and reverse. It has incredible steering because having that vectored thrust nozzle on the back instead of a rudder, you can just sit in place and literally just spin 360s. I mean, and then we also gave you the option to add a rudder. If you're doing big open water stuff and you want that tracking ability, you can also slap a rudder on the back of this and it will track with your nozzle. So as far as the battery goes, this boat is wild because it's basically any volt technology. We can run anywhere from 12 to 60 volts. You can take any up to Group 31 standard off-the-shelf battery, drop it in the box, hook it up, and the boat will do the rest for you.
So this is a kayak that, the world didn't know about just a few days ago, and now might be the most talked about kayak, over the past 2-3 days. The questions are going to be, how much does it cost? Is it available?
Yeah, I mean, the amazing thing about the FluxJet is we really designed this thing for price point, too. We want to drive a lot of value, and we've been seeing the market creep and creep and creep on everybody. This is going to be coming out Q1 26 at $2,900, completely rigged, ready to go with the drive and everything. So, being able to give everybody the real value of something that works just right out of the box, I think we're trying to drag the market back in the right direction, hopefully. So.
Okay, so there's our quick chat with Jason, and moral of the story is this thing is sweet. For shallow water, nothing beats a jet motor because there's no exposed prop to worry about. You can't hit anything. It's pretty simple. Shallow water equals jet boat. And this kayak itself was pretty feature rich in addition to that jet motor. And I could tell that after talking with Jason for a while, I talked to him like 2 of the 3 days because he just seemed like a nice dude. And I really wanted to pick his brain on this type of stuff because this is right up my alley. And it really seems like he did what we wish all companies would do. He talked to a ton of anglers and asked them, what's your pain point with existing kayaks and existing motors? And then he just went about and tried to fix them all. So I believe he told me that we're somewhere in like the 10-year mark of the making of this kayak. This was not a quick project by any means, but he's got almost everything you could think of on this kayak. He's got skid plates on the bottom so the kayak can go as shallow as you want. You can hit whatever you want. You're not hurting it. He's got a recess spot for both a standard transducer and a live scope scope transducer, so he's protecting both of those under the kayak, something I'd never seen before on the live scope side of things. He's got an onboard digital display. He's got a flush mount throttle on the side of it, so there's nothing sticking up that you can accidentally hit with your arm or your life jacket. We've all done that. It's so annoying with like our regular throttles that we have on Torqeedos or Newports. That throttle is completely flush with the kayak. He's got steering. He's got reverse. It turns on a dime. This is a very, very cool kayak. All you do is drop in a battery and everything else is taken care of. The other cool thing is you can use almost any battery with this kayak. This kayak can use a 12 volt, a 24 volt, a 36 volt, a 48 volt, or even a 60 volt battery. And they went as far as to add a voltage regulator for your accessories on board on this thing. So if you hook up, say you go crazy and you get a 60 volt battery because you want to go as fast as this thing will physically go and you want to go to the moon in it, well, you can still hook up your 12 volt electronics or lights or phone chargers or whatever, and it will automatically regulate the voltage that it's sending to those so that you get a clean 12 volts off of that same 60 volt battery. He also said it can handle fresh water. It can handle salt water. I know that was a question of a lot of people. Can I take this in salt water? Yes, it's made for oceans. You should be good to go there. He said your average speed is going to be anywhere from 3 to 7 miles an hour, depending on your battery. If you can go 7 miles an hour in this thing without any wind at your back or anything like that, that is flying. I mean, if I put my Newport on full speed and I go downriver in like some of the fastest spots in our river, I'm getting like 6.5 sometimes. So the fact that you could go that fast on just regular water would be insane, but I'm guessing you probably have to up your battery there to one of those big bulkier batteries to get that speed, but it is possible in this motor. The other nice thing about a jet motor is that there's no squat to the boat. So unlike something that has a prop that wants to squat and drag that boat down, that's why when you're in a motor boat, obviously you have trim on that back motor. In a kayak, you don't really have that luxury a lot of times, so you just have this rear squat. It's kind of annoying. That's when you talk about like the max hull speed of a kayak, because at some point you just hit the max speed that kayak can go. You don't have to worry about that with a jet motor. With a jet motor, it sits flatter on the water and you can achieve higher speeds. So the price on this thing, all things considered, isn't bad at like $2,900 fully rigged. That comes with nav lights, all the bells and whistles, some of which we didn't even get into or have time to hit here. Not a bad price at all. Again, very, very cool to see stuff like this. Hopefully this continues to, like we have said a million times now, let's make it 1,000,001, push things forward, and hopefully we will see more cool ideas like this come to light and solve some of the actual problems we have as kayak anglers. Okay, let's kind of switch gears here a little bit, kind of one final time here, and I want to get to 2 more products that I saw this year that I'm going to, again, put in that category of kind of diamonds in the rough. I think both of these got overlooked a little bit. So the first company I want to hit here really fast is called Svivlo, Svivlo. And you may or may not have heard of this company before. They're a Swedish company. They've been at ICAST the past, I think, 3 years now. This is their 3rd year. And they make a pretty unique braking system for bait casters that's different than anything else that you currently have in your lineup. I guarantee it. But that's not new this year. They've had that out for a while. There was one product in particular, though, they had this year that caught my eye that I know for sure they have not had in years past. And it's not the braking system itself. It's a completely different product that kind of adds on to something that they've already done. I think it's a really cool idea. So I had to set time aside and go back and chat with Svivlo founder, Patrick Zander.
Yes, of course, Andrew, and thanks for having me. We have a proprietary casting technology for bait casters. We call it KastGuard, and it works in a completely different way than all other technologies on the market. If that's a centrifugal brake, a magnetic brake, or a digital brake, they all rely on the spool speed, and they determine if they're going to brake based on the speed of the spool. You can never solve the backlash problem by doing that. That's why you have to use the thumb and you have to have a spool tension, etc. So a lot of different ways to manage backlash. With our technology, what we do, we sense if the lure is pulling the line or not. So when the lure stops pulling the line, then we reduce spool speed. That means that when the lure hits the water, you don't have to use the thumb. If the lure hits a wind gust or something, you're casting headwind,
It will just reduce speed so you don't have to worry about getting an overrun or a backlash. It's a mechanical system. It's not a digital system. It's friction-based because you have to use friction in order to stop the spool quick enough to avoid backlash.
This is Redneck Kid here trying to understand this. So what's the difference between spool speed versus line pull? Because if you're inside that spool, wouldn't those kind of be the same thing, sort of? Because that's how it knows the lure stopped, would be because the spool wants to stop? What's the difference there?
Yeah, so, I mean, it's can be challenging to explain how it works, but you're absolutely correct. Our technology rotates together with the spool.
Okay.
It does. But we use inertia to understand if the spool is reducing speed or not. So we are detecting a reduction in spool speed and not the speed itself. And that's the way we can determine if it's pulling the line or not. So it's essentially, we use a force called Euler force to determine if there is a change in rotational speed.
So then what's going on internally here? And I believe, I could be getting this wrong, but this technology sort of came over from like the watch world. How did that translate into a casting reel braking system?
Yeah, so this all started with my father many years ago, who was a watchmaker. He wasn't an angler. He was a problem solver. Growing up, I saw him standing on the beach casting with an old ambassador. And I didn't think about that at the time, but later I understood that was when he developed the technology, or the start of the technology at least. And I asked him a few years ago that if this technology works as good as you say it does, then we have to do something. It's just too good of a technology to be put on a shelf. So it's born out of watchmaking technology, and I think also the fact that he wasn't an angler allowed him to think outside of the box. Because if he were in the industry, he would probably try to make an existing technology a little bit better. And that's what they've been trying to do for 40 years.
So then that leads us to, again, I said it before, and I really mean this. I've looked at, thousands of products over the past day and a half, and we still have another day to go. One of the coolest things I think I've seen is the idea of trying to, I don't know if it's a word, modularize a casting reel. And you have done that with the Svevlo Finesse Kit. So you're trying to take your original Draken, which is a traditional casting reel that most of us would think of, and make it accessible for BFS anglers without having to buy a new reel. You just have to buy a kit that has the spool and the new side plate. So where did that idea come from? Was it hard to execute? And why do you think we don't see more people try to go that way?
Yeah, so for us, the reason why we went that route was it was the easiest way for us to get the product out in the market. Because very little changes. We a shallow and a more lightweight spool and a finesse-tuned cast guard. And we only have to do those changes. We can put that into an original Draken reel and get that out on the market. So that was the first reason. But then the second reason, to have something that is affordable and sustainable. Why buy two reels when you don't have to? And also when we talk to anglers, that they love that idea of not having to buy a new reel, but just if they want to go finesse fishing, they just switch the side plate and the spool and then they're ready.
To give people an idea of how much they're saving on this, what's the price difference between buying a new Draken reel versus just buying the Finesse Kit?
Yep, so this is, we just announced the Finesse Kit and a Draken Finesse Edition as well. The Finesse Edition will retail for $259, and the kit will retail for $119.
So there you go. Obviously a really cool braking system from Svevlo, but the coolest thing is that they're selling that kit that essentially makes their bait casters modular. So if you buy their regular bait caster, that Draken, you can buy this conversion kit to make it a BFS reel. In that kit, you get a brand new side plate that has that adjusted braking system already in it, and you get that new lighter BFS spool. So pop that spool in, pop the new side plate on with the new braking system, and you've got a BFS reel without having to fork over the money to buy a totally new reel. That to me is really cool because a BFS reel is not as simple as just swapping out the spool. And they've addressed both sides of this by including that side plate with the necessary updated braking system to handle that lighter spool. And I put this in here because it's cool, but also because I wish more companies would take this approach. But they don't because they want you to buy a new reel. They don't want you to buy a conversion kit. But modularity is a wide open frontier in fishing that very, very few companies have capitalized on so far. One product with multiple uses or multiple configurations, that is a direction I would like to see a lot of these companies go, and Svevlo is doing just that. So a huge kudos to the guys over at Svevlo, and we'll be keeping an eye on them in the coming years. Okay, and finally here, the last thing that really caught my eye was a company called Accufy, who pretty simply has created a live scope unit that's wireless and connects to your phone or tablet. Are you skeptical? Because I sure was. But if it works, there's real promise in that. So let's head back over to the show floor and check in with Nate from Accufy.
Thanks for stopping by the booth, Andrew. Appreciate it. So we have two product offerings that we're really trying to promote here at ICAST this year. So first is the Ping Live Mini. Our Ping Live Mini is kind of our entry-level product that we'll be launching in the U.S. hopefully within the next month. The Ping Live Mini is a pretty comparable product to your Eagle Eye 9 or those kind of more entry-level live sonar products. So it gives you a variety of options in terms of mounting. So you can mount it to, if you got a trolling motor, you can mount it to your barrel. You can pole mount it. A huge part of our target audience is kayak fishers or ice fishers. So it really cuts out a lot of the bulk and is also pretty affordable. So you're able to mount it directly to your pole. You connect the transducer directly to your Wi-Fi router or USB router options, and then you're able to send the image directly to your phone or iPad. So it makes the unit a lot more portable, a lot more user friendly, and definitely cuts a lot of the costs. So that unit's going for hopefully we're launching in a month, and we're targeting around the 700s for USD. And then our second product over here is the Ping Live. So the Ping Live is our flagship product. We launched in Canada about 2 months ago, and we just sold out last week. So units are definitely flying off the shelf. And the Ping Live is a bit more of a heavy-duty unit. It's got 3 bands there, and is definitely offering a bit more of a comprehensive view. And that guy is going for about $17.49 Canadian, which would be somewhere in the $12.75 range for USD. So.
Okay, so you heard it there. Basically, you have 2 little units that they're calling Ping units. First, we have a smaller unit, so that's much more along the lines of the technology that's in the Lowrance Eagle Eye. So it's less beams, less screen coverage. You're kind of putting together forward and down together in 2 beams to try and mismatch together like a true forward-facing sonar look to it. The problem there is that you're going to have this big black line in the middle of your screen where there's kind of a dead area, and it's really not the best technology. Will it work? Yes, it will work, but it's not what you're used to seeing when you think of live scope. And then they have the other unit, which is more of a full-blown Garmin LV34 regular live scope plus look to it. Both offer wireless transmission to your phone or your tablet in real time. So there's no need to hardwire or connect to a graph. And the black boxes are like 1/5 the size of my Garmin black box. So they're small, they're lightweight, they're wireless, and you can stream live sonar right to your phone. Now, I think they're only available in Canada right now, and I'm sure there are probably going to be issues about what they are or aren't allowed to sell over here in the United States and copyrights and all that kind of stuff. I'm not a lawyer. I don't know what's proprietary. I don't know any of those things. I'm just a dude that likes to fish and was walking around and thought it was cool that you can stream this to your phone. I'm not sure of the morality or legality of any of that type of stuff. That is not the case I'm trying to make here. I'm trying to make the case that this is what I would love to see out of live sonar. I would love to see the ability to cut cords. I would love to see the ability to shrink the size of a black box. All of those things show promise in that product that I saw from Accufy that all of the big companies are not doing yet. Now, could there be problems with lag? Yes. guess. They assured me there's no lag, but I've never tried this before. I don't know for sure. I have to imagine there might be a little bit there, but especially if you're in a kayak or you're ice fishing or something like that, I could see this being a real winner if it works as well as they say it does. So that was AccuFi and our last sort of diamond in the rough product that we saw at ICAST. Okay, now, very, very quickly, I want to run you guys through who won the awards at ICAST this year, and then we are going to crown the prestigious Tackle Talk Best and Worst in Show of ICAST 2025, where we give you our opinion on who we think the winners and maybe losers were of ICAST this year. So let's start with the ICAST awards themselves, the real ones, and I'm going to trim this down and go through this really quickly because you probably have already seen these, but it's worth mentioning again. So this year, your winner for Best Freshwater Reel was the Daiwa Ballistic 3000 MGLT. And then your winner for Best Freshwater Rod was the Daiwa Tatula Cork Bass Rods. So a clean sweep from Daiwa in Best Rod and Best Reel, and deservingly so, right? We talked about it. I think Shimano had a pretty weak showing this year. I think Daiwa showed up. They were definitely rewarded for that when the awards came out on the second day. And then your winner for Best Freshwater Soft Lure went to the Z-Man Swag LT Swim Bait. Your winner for the Best Freshwater Hard Lure went to the Rapala Claptail 110. So far we are 4 for 4 in terms of products that we have already discussed at length on this show and we sought out and talked about before the awards were even out. And then your winner for Best Marine Electronics went to Humminbird's new Explore Fish Finder series, which was very well deserved in my mind. Those units are incredibly user-friendly, they're clean, they're awesome graphs, and to be honest, I think I might make the switch to one of these here in the near future. I miss my Humminbird side imaging so much, and they fixed a lot of the issues that I had with the older Humminbird units, so they came through with a big win, and rightfully so. And then your winner for Best Fishing Line went to Power Pro's Max 8. I'm fine with that choice, I guess. I really wasn't blown away by any of the line choices that I saw when I was there this week. Your winner for Best Motorized Boating Accessory went to the Garmin Force Current Kayak Motor, no surprise there. Your winner for Best Boat or Watercraft went to that Chimera Electric Jet Fishing Kayak from FluxJet Kayaks. So again, 2 more products that we've talked about extensively today. And the rest was a lot of like saltwater and apparel and novelties, kids combos, stuff like that I don't think really applies to us too much here on Tackle Talk. So overall, for maybe the first time since I've been attending ICAST, I think they actually got the awards right this year. Pretty darn close. I think you might be able to have some discussion about the Z-Man Swag LT or the Rapala Claptail, but overall, I think they did a really solid job this year voting on those best of categories, and to be honest, I would say probably 80% of those that we just heard as far as winners go were the people that I voted for too, so we aligned pretty well in terms of what I thought should have been the winners and what the winners actually were. And then your big award, Best in Show. Who would be crowned the best product at ICAST 2025? Of all of the products we just mentioned, those are now in the running. So all of the best of categories get put into one big group and everybody votes for the best in show out of those best of category winners. And your winner this year for best in show at ICAST 2025 went to the Chimera Electric Jet Fishing Kayak from FluxJet Kayaks. Awesome. Just awesome, right? Awesome to see it in the kayak space. I think it's a great pick. It's practical. It's innovative. It's thoughtfully designed. They seemed like really great people. And I can promise you that they did not pay to win this award and buy this award like a lot of people think happens some years. I mean, they haven't even launched this yet. And when I talked to Jason, honestly, he thought they were going to come over here. They'd have this thing on display. There'd be a few people that walk by and go, that's weird or that's cool. And then they'd move on. In their wildest imaginations, I can promise you that they could not have predicted that that's how this week would go for them. And in true media reporter fashion, I had to go back and grab a comment from Jason, the CEO of FluxJet, after their big win. So we'll take a listen to that real fast right now, too.
So, Jason, not only did you win Best Category, you won Best in Show, which is the most prestigious award at this entire show that we do every single year. There's hundreds, if not thousands, of companies here. The FluxJet won it all. What does that mean for you as a company and, as you start out and this idea and validation and maybe doors that this opens for you?
Yeah, I'll tell you, it's been a long road getting here. I mean, the drive tack has been 10-year grind, and then we did a 6-month sprint to get the boat together. I mean, we were literally scrambling to get this thing on a plane to get it here in time, and it has been wild. And I was overwhelmed just with the response of people walking by, and being able to finally talk about this thing after all this time was crazy. I mean, I've been basically working in a closet for years on this thing in the dark, not able to talk about it. And then not only did we win the best boat, but then they handed me a trophy yesterday for best in show, and it's just wow. I really came into this expecting everyone just to walk by for 3 days and not even realize that there was a drive in it. And the people that did, I figured they'd walk on and be like, oh, it's a gimmick. And, I figured the pros would come over and rip my head off and tell me this thing is dumb. But no, it turns out the fishing community walked by. They totally got it and came by, and, nothing but praise. And I can't be more thankful than I am right now for everybody's feedback on the boat. And now we just got to deliver and get these boats out there, and I'm really looking forward to seeing people's videos out on the water and being able to get their reaction to this thing. So
there you go. Congratulations again to FluxJet on their big win, and overall a really solid award selection this year at ICAST 2025. But that means there is still one thing left to do, and it's our awards. So the Tackle Talk Podcast's ICAST 2025 Best in Show and Worst in Show. So let's start with the bad, and then we'll end on a high note here. So I've got a clear winner that I think was probably the weirdest or worst product that I saw here, but I think we have a runner-up too. So the runner-up this year for Worst in Show, and again, I say this kind of tongue-in-cheek, I'm not trying to bash any of these companies, but it was something that was a true head-scratcher to me when I saw it, was the Frog Factory's Mongrel. So Mongrel, Mongrel. And this, folks, is like a 4.5-inch, 1 ounce, half spook, half hollow body frog. It's got an overall shape of a spook. It's 4.5 inches long, pretty slender, but it's got a real heavy, hard plastic top half to it where the head is, and that looks like a spook. And then the back half, like the butt half of this thing, is a skinny, hollow body frog with 2 really small, kind of like frog hooks that expose when that back half collapses. So it almost looks like if you took a super spook and then you also took, I don't know if you guys are even going to remember this, but like the Lunker Hunt Froglet, which was like a spook-shaped hollow body frog back in the day. If you took those two things, sawed them in half, and glued them together, that's what this Frog Factory Mongrel looked like. And I'm not putting this as runner-up of Worst in Show because of its fish attracting ability. I'm sure you can draw strikes on this thing, but I'm putting it here because of what I'm going to assume is going to be an abysmal hookup ratio. Because, quite simply, that whole bait does not collapse, just the back half. So that fish has to get just the back half of that bait to get hooked, in my mind, because if it swallows the whole bait and it gets that hard part in its lips, well, then when you pull it out, the whole thing's just going to fly out. It doesn't actually collapse when that fish bites down. So I feel like your hookup rate is going to be terrible on this. It's going to slide out of a lot of fish's mouths. You're going to get a lot of short strikes. I don't know. Maybe it's not the case, but sure looked like it when I picked this thing up. Being like, is this serious? Is this a real thing? Yeah. The Frog Factory Mongrel is going to be my runner-up for the worst thing that I saw this weekend. And then that brings us to our 2025 Worst in Show this year. And this is the wackiest, silliest lure that I saw all week. And it's going to go to Buckeye Lures for their Bubbler Blade. Now, this, folks, is quite simply a spinnerbait, but take the blade off of it, off the top, and put a whopper plopper on it. So it's half whopper plopper, half spinnerbait. And I get the idea that you're going for. You have surface disturbance with like a skirted jig hanging down below it that the fish can eat. I understand, but keeping that up there is going to require a lot faster speed than you have to work a traditional plopper, because I'm assuming this doesn't actually float. It's got a lead head where you've got this like spinnerbait part of it. So it's got wire, it's got a head, it's got skirts, got hooks, got all that kind of stuff like a regular spinnerbait does. So that part sits below the water. It's going to want to draw this thing all the way down under the water unless you keep and maintain that fast speed, almost like you would have to with like a buzzbait. A buzzbait doesn't float when you kill it. You have to keep it up there with that fast speed. I have to assume this thing is not very versatile, and you almost have to burn this thing to keep it up on the water. I feel like you're also going to get a lot of short strikes on this because you're going to have some fish go for the plopper part, and they're going going to miss that actual single hook that's hanging down below. I'm thinking specifically smallmouth on this. I think you're going to get a lot of blow-ups on the actual plopper part, but not a lot of hooked fish. And at the end of the day, to be honest, it just looks silly. This is what people think of when they want to make fun of ICAST. A whopper plopper spinnerbait mashup. Just treating fishing lures like a bad recipe. All right, we're going to take 1 cup of spinnerbait and we're going to add that to our bowl here. And now we're going to take 1 cup of whopper plopper. We're going to add that in here. We're going to add a little pinch of corny marketing, and then voila, we have a bubbler blade. So congratulations to the bubbler blade, which unfortunately wins your Tackle Talk 2025 ICAST Worst in Show. Okay, now it's time for our picks for Best in Show. And these are the products that I just simply liked best. Some for their innovation, some for their practicality, or just things that I'm excited to fish personally. But let's get to the top 5 here of what I saw this past week. In 5th place, I'm going to go with the Z-Man Llama tubes. They're small, they're Elastec, practical. It's a proven shape that we've never got from Z-Man before, and I'm excited to finally fish some micro tubes that will last me for months on each individual one because it's Elastec. That's going to get number 5 for me from this year. Number 4 is going to go to that Flux Jet kayak. Jet motor plus kayak equals awesome. Enough said for me. We've already talked about it at length. They won Best in Show. I'm not going to totally disagree with that, but I'm definitely going to make sure they're in my top 5. They are going to be in here at number 4. Number 3 this year of our Best in Show rankings at ICAST 2025 is going to go to the Spro and KGB Little Guy. That thing is going to smoke fish around me. And when those fish don't want to play nice with a 6 or a 7-inch glide bait, or I want something smaller that I can throw up in a little bit hairier situations and I don't have to worry about snagging up a $170 bait, this one is going to play. So that's going to be our number 3 here, the Spro KGB Little Guy. Number 2 of our ICAST 2025 Best in Show awards is going to go to the Daiwa Tatula cork rods. I was really impressed with these. They have some really cool models, those 2 BFS models, the swim bait model, some awesome moving baits and bottom contact rods, a really solid full line of casting and spinning rods, cork handles, light, sensitive, pretty classy looking, all at a really great price point of $149. This one was tough for me. I really wanted to give this one the win because I felt like I was just that impressed with these rods, and I would have loved to give them the win, but there is one giant thing standing in their way, and that would be your Tackle Talk ICAST Best in Show winner for 2025, the Garmin Force Current Kayak Motor. Like we said, am I going to buy it? Me personally, probably not. But I wish I could. I wish I had $3,600 to spend on a kayak motor. But if I did, this would be so incredibly cool. The amount of technology and features they packed into this kayak motor is really impressive. And I think and I hope it will continue to push stern-mounted kayak motors forward for years to come. So huge hats off to the Garmin crew for dedicating that kind of time and money to the kayak space. What an incredibly cool kayak motor that Garmin Force Current Kayak Motor is. Okay, everybody, now that brings us to the end of our episode today. And let me tell you, there was so much to see here. I could have gone on for 5 more hours if we had the time, but I am running low on sleep right now. I'm gassed. Turning this episode around in 2 days after getting back while working, the 2 days that I got back at my normal job, by the way, is a struggle, but this episode is really special to me. I want to get this out in a timely fashion so that you guys have this to listen to the Tuesday after ICAST, so that you can hear our coverage, our interviews, and our real opinions on the products at ICAST that we were able to see and feel last week, and hopefully in a way that you're not going to get from any other podcasts. So I really hope you guys enjoyed this episode. I know it's long. I know there's a ton to cover, but if you made it this far, I sincerely thank you for listening and supporting this show. I hope you guys heard about some gear that you can get excited about, or on the flip side, some gear that now we have saved you from buying that maybe you would have bought that we didn't really think were winners this year. But either way, whether you feel inclined to buy or not buy anything we talked about today, hopefully this information today helped you make a more informed decision either way. And ultimately, that's what Tackle Talk is about. Unbiased, unfiltered information to make you a more savvy consumer and a better angler. And with that, we are going to bid you a fond farewell for this week. Thank you, everybody, for listening. As always, be sure to subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeart, Amazon, wherever you listen to podcasts. If you can take a second and leave us a review on Apple or Spotify, that would help a ton. That's probably the best thing you can do to actually help support this show. Find us on the web, tackletalkpodcast.com, and we'll see you right back here next Tuesday for another brand new episode of Tackle Talk.
Thank you for listening to the Tackle Talk Podcast. Tackle Talk is produced by Andrew Hayes. Copyright 2019. For more, please subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts.